What's up? Welcome back to Beyond the Box Score. I've got a familiar face here in Rich Hribar, who's been on a lot to help us out this offseason. Super sharp dude. Dan Schneier and I are both fans. You might not know Pat Kerrane yet, though. So I'm really excited to introduce him to our audience here. The sickos, I think, are going to eat up all the Pat Kerrane content. His branding is like all about upside, right? And that's exactly what we're doing here. Is just like, you know, the Beyond the Box Score people love to swing big on the Bhayshul Tutens of the world. And if you miss, just move on. Who cares? Just forget about it. Act like it didn't happen. I don't think that's exactly Pat's brand. I don't want to speak for him. But I'm really excited to bring him on today. We've got a lot that we can talk about for sure. I think these two go about as deep as anybody I know. Spend a lot of time thinking about this stuff. So I'm really curious to see where this conversation might go. Pat, I want to throw it to you first. Let the people know what you've been working on, where they can find your work, how they can familiarize themselves with Pat Kerrane.
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, I should mention Reeves and I do a show in season, which apparently is in like 2 weeks, it feels like at this point. But we do an in-season show called Angles and Upside, where we dive into what we think is going to happen in the next slate of games, as we both do preview content. And so, yeah, that's definitely worth checking out for anyone kind of in the daily games, DFS street, even kind of start-sit stuff. Although it is on the longer side. So if you're just there for one key start-sit decision, you might want to scrub until you find that matchup.
People literally came in our comments last year and were like, y'all are getting outworked. You say you're the longest podcast. We found one longer than yours. And it was your guys' podcast.
I joked before we got on that I said Pat talked to me so much during last season that we haven't talked all off season.
we did a whole year's worth in the NFL season. So yeah, check that out. That's over on the Legendary Upside YouTube, and doing a ton of content right now there on Best Ball. But my site, Legendary Upside, I started after I won BBM 3 and built around an article series that I started doing when I was over at RotoWorld around the idea of these early round running backs. It's really helpful if they have extreme upside because they're actually fairly risky picks. And so, these guys, especially for redraft, actually more so than Best Ball, you actually do want to kind of target the guys who have the potential to be what the whole season ends up being about. So, finding that absolute nuclear breakout. And so I write that article every summer. I'll have that out in early August. And, you can look for that. And then all my rankings and other articles are over at Legendary Upside for Best Ball and redraft.
And Lord Reeves, what are you cooking up these days?
Yeah, I've been writing draft kit content since the 4th of July. This week I'm doing like my big yearly like team regression series, kind of looking at things from a lens of, what teams we can expect to, kind of have reduction in terms of, per drive output, scoring output, converting, possessions into touchdowns, all that good stuff to kind of give you maybe like a North Star for like a team situation that maybe just didn't project as well or something, or like something that was surprising. I can tell you, I've written the whole series already. They're coming out this week. And just to get a little bit of a spoiler, there were 3 teams that consistently came up in every article in the 4-article series. And they were the Saints, the Jets, and the Texans. Surprisingly, the Texans don't get a lot of buzz. But this is a team that I think when you look at like potentially being undervalued, because like we inherently know they're a good team. Like they've been in the playoffs 3 years in a row. They've got a good defense and they have like players we like, but like they're not thought of like having like maybe like upside, but it's like, man, there could be like a little more juice there. Like, because they're a team I never thought of until I wrote the series too. And I was like, you know what? Like we are really undervaluing the Texans a little bit.
I've been drafting the Texans, and in some of the Best Ball stuff, you are thinking through things a little bit more from like who can just like beat their ADP, be like a nice like smaller hit. It's hard to dream on the Texans as an absolute like nuclear smash, but I mean, I think Montgomery's actually pretty well priced, especially for Best Ball. Dalton Schultz, I have a lot of. Dalton Schultz is one of my highest drafted tight ends. I don't think a ton has changed for him. He's actually my highest drafted tight end. Just realizing that live here, but I mean, he's too cheap. He's like kind of in the same tier as a bunch of guys that go ahead of him, and then those guys go, and the last one left is Schultz, and you take Schultz.
And, you know, obviously the last time we saw the Texans, they basically like saw CJ Stroud play like one of the worst games like an NFL quarterback's ever played in history. So that's like fresh in everyone's mind. But I mean, you go back to his rookie year, they were what, 13th in points scored. He missed 2 games. Like it's like, all right, there might be some juice here still, but like you said, they're mostly all late round guys except for Collins. Everyone there is pretty affordable.
Totally.
I just talked with Matt Harmon. We did a show where we were like, fix your wide receiver rankings, and I asked him at the end. I brought up like 8 names of guys that I know that he loves, and I was like, who of these stands out the most that you're like taking shots on at a discount? And Jalen Knoll is who we landed on, which like literally nobody cares about except for like me and Matt and a few randos. I think that they're interesting for sure. I think a lot of the Stroud stuff flew under the radar, but he made a lot of subtle improvements last year, and then because the season ended so poorly, people are out on him. They don't have like an exciting play caller necessarily, so it's not one that fantasy nerds gravitate towards.
And I wonder how much of that like is a true thing, because like it could be just Nick Caley's like a straight up donkey, right? Like that totally exists. But it's like also kind of like, do we want to give him a year too because of everything they had going on last year?
Right.
How much of it was, you know, the fact that they were rotating, you know, running backs, they were rotating offensive linemen, they were rotating wide receivers. Like, it feels like there's more stability going into this year. So like, I feel like if they are bad, it is probably going to be Nick Caley's
I mean,
fault.
first year OC, and you have a really bad offensive line and 2 rookie wide receivers / you have to play Christian Kirk and Xavier Hutchinson if you don't play the rookie. So it wasn't an ideal setup. I mean, the offensive line isn't all that much better now, and you know they didn't really add a ton of weapons. So you're hoping the guys step up in year 2 and Higgins and Knoll, but they do get Dell back potentially, which could help. And I think probably just the year of familiarity with Stroud in the offense is probably the biggest thing you're betting on there. Plus, like you said, they've been a good team. I think their defense will be so good that it might limit pass attempts, but you did also have them be amazing last year, like truly a dominant defense, and they'll be good. But what if they're not like, you know, truly top tier defense, even for like a stretch of the season, even if they're like, you know, they're down Will Anderson for 4 games and they're not quite as dominant. Something like that over the full season, particularly in best ball, you know, could be helpful.
I've got up on the screen here. I don't think anybody realizes this. His pass success rate and EPA per dropback for CJ Stroud were very close to what we saw from him in year 1 last year.
And that was with no easy buttons. Like they ran no play action, they ran no pre-snap motion, like none of that stuff. And when they did use that stuff, he was effective. But I just wondered if they didn't have all the dressing that typically like a McVay offense would have, just because of the offensive line and receiver room and stuff like that. So I am solely putting it on Nick Caley this year, though.
What exactly was the frame of context here? What it was the Texans and the Saints, and there was one other team, and they were
the Jets. The Jets were a team that also
they were the most
undervalued offenses.
Like just teams that we should be blind betting on, you know, having like marked improvement this year, like, you know, and the Saints have been like a popular team for everyone, I think, most of this offseason. The Jets are a wild card for me because I do actually like their roster a lot. I like the interior offensive line. I like, obviously, Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson.
I mean, the tackles are pretty good, too.
Yeah, and they're young players. I'm interested as a core. My one wild card with the Jets, though, that I keep coming back to from a managed stance, not a best ball stance, because I've been mixing in, like, these guys, but from a managed league stance is they have that week 13 bye, and it's like, if they just don't have enough wins, do they just play Klubnik that last month? If, like, they're staring down the gun barrel of a QB. And the Cardinals are like this too. The Cardinals have that week 14 bye, and it's like the perfect spot if like they suck to just play the last month of the season with Carson Beck. And like that's my one thing I keep coming back to with the Jets is just like, do they have enough team wins to justify starting Geno Smith for those like final 5 weeks?
Their over/under is 5.5, and like I really think the answer to that is probably no. And that we do get Klubnik at the end of the season, which has me a little bit more cautious on the expensive Jets. Like I'm pretty much right even with the market. Like I've got like literally neutral exposure, 8.3% to Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson in my best ball stuff right now. The guy who really jumps out is Omar Cooper, where it's like he's so cheap in best ball that I don't even think like one, he's cheap enough where he could potentially get there with Klubnik. Like he's paying off an ADP in the 140s, sometimes the 150s, you're getting him there. So, I mean, I'm just less concerned because what I need is it's just a lower bar for him to clear. And then it could also be the thing where he doesn't contribute much for my teams in the playoffs, but he was just like an advance rate monster on an undervalued offense when Geno Smith is at the helm, which will be for the majority of the season. I don't think there are any hurry to bench Geno. I think benching Geno is highly correlated with Aaron Glenn getting fired, like in season. So I think Glenn is pretty incentivized to keep the Geno thing looking like it's viable for as long as humanly possible. I do think eventually it'll fall off. And, they just won't have enough wins. They're heading into week 15 with 3 wins. Like,
and that's what we talk about always with these rookie quarterbacks, even the day 3 guys, is that eventually, like, if you just don't have wins, like, they'll take a look, especially if you're staring at, taking a
they almost have to.
Year. Yeah, it'd be malpractice. It's the same thing when the Raiders can tell us all they want right now about Mendoza sitting out the entire year, but if they're like 1-6, like the first question Kubiak's going to get after every game is going to be like, win Mendoza. And
that happens at 1-2. Like the second they fall below 500. Yeah.
After the Dolphins game, because I think they opened Dolphins, and then it's like the rest.
They're going to be riding high. We're going to be hearing a ton about Cousins starting all season, and maybe next season too after the Dolphins game. How do I specifically bet against that? Like pre week 2.
There's a lot I want to unpack there. The schedule is absolutely brutal for the Raiders. I think they probably win like 2 of their first 11, 12, 13 games or something. We just did a video, me and Dan, where we talked about a lot of this specific type of stuff. We looked at every single team. I went through and read all the coach speak index stuff on every team, and then looked at their schedule and just tried to visualize how the season might go at the beginning of the season. And this is a theory I want to bring up to you, is like, do we just fade all the rookies? We'll talk about that in a moment. And it's because I think this is for managed leagues. For the Titans, for the Cardinals, for a number of these teams, they start off with a pretty brutal schedule. And then things could get a lot nicer at the later part of the season. Is like, well, that's great. That actually lines up exactly how we want for these rookies with playing time and roles changing and everything. And so it might be, it's a really specific point, but I think it might be a better year to just like not draft them and then trade for them if you can, in theory. Unfortunately, though, the ADPs are way down on all of these rookies this year because everybody hated the draft class so much. So it might be fine just drafting them. I wanted to talk about Omar Cooper Jr. though, because you're literally the first person I've heard bring him up since the NFL draft. Back in draft season, we did videos on all these players, like pre-draft, like 20, 30-minute deep dives on historical context, the way that they were used, how they might translate to the NFL. And he stands out to me as like really interesting, a round 1 prospect that's just completely forgotten about. But he was like just on the periphery of guys historically who have come into the league and been very, very good for fantasy because they work inside out. They might have a little bit of route winning ability too, and they have yak ability. And so like if he actually does have the ability to win routes, which there was like some of the reception perception charting pointed towards that being a potential outcome for him. I think if you watch the film, like there were a lot of big wins on film where it's like, well, maybe he has some kind of like Josh Downs ability to shake players to him. And then he's also awesome with the ball in his hands, but there was a little bit of inconsistency with the route running. And so it's just like, this guy's interesting where he profiles similarly from like a body and size standpoint. And then also the utilization in a lot of ways, he profiles similarly to some of these really good, I don't want to say Jason, but like those kind of players that have been awesome for fantasy because they can work inside out. But it's like, nobody cares at all because he's on the Jets, I guess.
But I think that is why. Because he is, he's on Indiana. Like this is the national championship winning team. He was generally well regarded throughout the entire process, seen as potential first round pick. The maybe not the entire way. Like I remember looking in January, February again, my kind of like first look of where these guys might go. He wasn't seen really as like a true first round potential, but that quickly changed. And he was athletic. He's not like an insane athlete, but he checked all the boxes. There that helped solidify the first round draft capital. But I think that the thing that's really driving why he went in the first round is the tape. And when there's guys with production profiles that are a little spotty, which I think he was a 4-year player. He never really had like a true breakout season as an underclassman. His best season, the one that's going to get him drafted, is his 4th year, which has been historically kind of a pretty big red flag. But okay, the production profile is not there. What does the NFL like that's not production? And that generally falls into two different camps at wide receiver. The first being he's an absolutely insane athlete, and that's riskier. I think that actually makes me more nervous. Then the other thing is he is a professional wide receiver. He does things that we know will work at the NFL level, and we're kind of taking him to be like a higher floor, immediate contributor type of guy. He maybe doesn't have the ultra high ceiling of these guys who produce, very early into their career. But he'll be productive and probably pretty quickly. And I think that's where I fall on Cooper, is that like if it's going to work, it'll probably work pretty quickly. He is good after the catch. He was efficient 2 years ago in yards per route run with an 8 out of 16 with 2.52 yards per route run, and then 2.55 this past year with an 8 out of 9.7 and more of kind of a yards after catch driven role. So he's done a couple different things. He can play in the slot as he did for 83% of his snaps last year. He can play out wide as he did for 90% of his snaps in 2024. So he does have that inside out profile and the potential to move from being a slot receiver in week 1 or whatever, and that early part of the season, and then ultimately take over some of A.D. Mitchell's work, where Mitchell's still the outside wide receiver in 3 wide receiver sets, you'd think, but in 2 wide receiver sets, Cooper ends up being that guy. And that, they're going to move Wilson to the slot some. And so you have, the ability to move Cooper around more as the season goes on. They don't have a 4th wide receiver there. Like it's pretty easy for him to emerge as the number 2 target in this offense, depending on, how ready Sadiq is. And he is just really, really cheap. This is about as cheap as you will find a first-round wide receiver with a clear path to playing time.
I wanted to point you to this. I looked at slot heavy receivers and like how often we've seen like slot profiles drafted like within various draft ranges, and it goes up later into the draft. So basically it's just like players in round 1. It's pretty unlikely that you're drafting a slot receiver there. I think this is more relevant to like Makai Lemon. But I thought it was interesting for him too. If you look at receivers who were picked early, and he wasn't top 16. So again, like Lemon is closer to this range. But players who were picked early who were slot dominant in college were really, really good. It's Neighbors, Jalen Waddle, Drake London, Jerry Jeudy is the worst one on that group. And then
I would take Jerry Jeudy at this price. Like Jerry Judy's early career, I win. Like that's where the price stuff really is factors in so much. We're like, what I even need to win this bet becomes Jerry Jeudy.
Wide receivers who were picked outside of the top 16, but still in round 1 that had a slot rate above 50% were Justin Jefferson, JSN, Emeka Egbuka, Jordan Addison, Ricky Pearsall, Treylon Burks, Kadarius Toney. And then I had, this is pre-draft, projected like maybe Makai Lemon, maybe Casey Concepcion, maybe Omar Cooper Jr. So the theory is just like teams don't really feel a need to draft slot receivers lately, I don't think. And outside of a few of those bad misses like Toney and Burks, I feel like the ones who have warranted round 1 draft capital have actually ended up being really good investments. They fit the modern NFL. And I think there's a chance that Cooper kind of fits into that, and he's just completely forgotten about it. I think Concepcion, just to a lesser extent, kind of fits into that too, and is also kind of forgotten about in drafts.
He's super cheap too. And it's because he's on the Browns. But I think he could be, I like Harold Van Nunn a lot, but generally a wide receiver is the number 1 target on an NFL team. And by the end of the year, I think Concepcion could be the clear number 1 target on an NFL team. And he's going outside the top 100 picks by, a decent margin, outside the top 120 sometimes. So, yeah, I think Concepcion is another clear target. I would say more generally, I think, from a dynasty lens, this was a bad rookie class. From a Superflex dynasty lens, which is kind of the dominant form now, it was a very bad rookie class because you only had Mendoza. You get a second first-round rookie at quarterback, and he's going to sit behind Stafford for who knows how long. Like, there just wasn't any Superflex depth. And the running back class, which is where we get a lot of the fun in these rookie drafts, was so thin. You're taking like day 3 guys pretty quickly. So to me, I think it was fair to say this rookie class isn't good from a dynasty lens. But I don't think it's fair to say this is a bad rookie wide receiver class. This is not a bad rookie wide receiver class. We had 2 top 10 wide receivers. Makai Lemon is a good prospect who went first round. Omar Cooper also went first round, has some, a spottier profile, but it's not a terrible one. Casey Concepcion's profile is pretty exciting, actually, and he also went first round. So we have like a number of good bets here. There's some second rounders that jump out as interesting as well. I think the prices on the rookie wide receivers for redraft and best ball reflect kind of an overly negative view of the rookie class as a whole, and that we've been burned by rookie wide receiver pricing moving up over the past few years and it not working out in some cases. Like even Tetairoa McMillan was probably overpriced for what he was ultimately able to deliver despite being a very good player. So you have like the market getting a little bit shakier on the rookie wide receiver bet generally, and then paired with this lack of enthusiasm for the rookie class. I just think there's a lot of values at the rookie wide receiver spot right now.
For sure. I think it's interesting. So your tagline here is like legendary upside. And I heard you, what really got me wanting to do this podcast was I heard you on Theo Grimminger's show on RotoWire. You brought up some players that I don't think people are talking about much. And specifically, I don't think people think of as upside bets. So Makai Lemon was one of them. And I think he's really interesting where people kind of think of him as this like bunny hop slot receiver. Mm-hmm. The team's going to be run heavy, and Jalen Hurts isn't really the kind of quarterback who can facilitate much passing upside. And there's some merit to some of that, but at the same time, I think Lemon can potentially do more than that. I mean, we've seen Philly be pretty sharp with the times that they've traded up to make moves like this. And we know he can create with the ball in his hands. He can play inside out. There's target ambiguity. And we've seen Hurts really lock in on players before where he's created like pretty massive target share numbers. And it's been pretty concentrated on just 1, 2, 3 guys. They've had some of the lowest like target rates among ancillary players of like any like Jahan Dotson coming in with like a 9% target per route run rate. Like that's really, really unusually low for a receiver, but that's kind of been traditional among the Jalen Hurts seasons. So I wonder if he's ahead of Wicks and he's getting out there in 2 receiver sets, if he has a lot more upside than people realize. I'm curious though, for like, league winning purposes, like massive blow up seasons, if you think that any of these rookies do get there on these bad teams, or if it's more just this is a clear value and something to be aware of because it's basically free, but Casey Concepcion could actually play a pretty large role and could be a really good player. And same thing for Cooper Jr., same thing for Lemon. Any way you want to take that, either one of you.
I think Lemon and Concepcion do have like league winning upside where you're looking at guys who can play inside and outside and can draw targets at a really high rate. And for Lemon, he gets these comps to Amon-Ra, which I think are like, I get it. He could do Amon-Ra type stuff, but his top comp for me was Jackson Smith and Jigba. And I think he has that ability to play inside and outside. And JSN started as a slot. He's not a slot anymore. And, it might take a few years for Lemon to, hit that like high end upside if he's even got it in him, of course. But like, I don't need that because of the price is really cheap now. I mean, you can get him in the 8th round, sometimes the 9th round. You can get him in the 7th round now every single time that you want. I think the misconception on Lemon is that he's sort of just a slot receiver and just a shallow target earner. The highest percentage of his career yards were on 20+ yard targets. He can draw targets deep. Matt Harmon's write up on him was pretty exciting. He had him at red on the 9 route and green everywhere else. And the curse of the all green chart doesn't apply here. So we're actually happy with the 9 routes not being hitting the success rate bar there. But he's a player who, in addition to I think just being good at football, which is an early declare, true breakout in his junior season, very efficient, like a big program with reasonably good target competition in Jacoby Lane. Zachariah Branch was there at one point too. But Lane got drafted in the 3rd round as well. Like it's not like there was zero target competition here. He has a great profile from the perspective of, is he good? Is he going to be able to play in the NFL? I feel great about that. He's a 1st round pick, was productive and declared early. Like all of that's good. He was efficient, all of it. What about fantasy? Like, am I getting, because Carnell Tate, I think people poke holes and I kind of get it. Like he might be more of like a downfield guy, better for real life than fantasy. Like Lemon, it's like super fantasy friendly. He can get open quickly. He can get open shallow. He can do damage in the intermediate part of the field, and he's not dead to win downfield either, especially, if he's in a good offense with another good wide receiver who's going to draw some coverage, which he is. Like, he's set up to really like hit the ground running as a slot receiver right away. And then over time, and by the way, I'm not even sure if it's over time. That time might be August that he beats out Dontavian Wicks. The time where he is ahead of Dontavian Wicks in 2 wide receiver sets, like that might be training camp for all we know. I don't think Wicks is some huge roadblock. I think that's maybe another thing where I'm off from market on Lemon, is that I don't view him as this like end of season play when he finally gets playing time. Like, he's set up to play right away and potentially be a starting wide receiver in 2 wide receiver sets early in the year.
And they get Washington in week 1. And that could be really fun. Like, if that turns into a shootout, if Jaden Daniels is able to sustain that kind of stuff, like in week
That'd be
1,
fun.
Back and forth, like you could see a huge limiting performance right out the gate. And it's like, oh yeah, we were way too low on this guy, right? Like, if he comes out as 7 receptions in week 1, people will be very reactive to that, I think. I think you would really like this conversation I just had with Matt Harmon. We brought up DeVonta Smith a lot. I wanted to get his thoughts because Matt was like crazy bullish on Smith in 2024. So I was curious what the charting was like last year, because I know the team took a step back in a lot of ways. And we ended up actually talking more about, we talked about Lemon more than I expected. And Matt has kind of a theory that he isn't like committed to, but he's like, this could happen. And it's like, what if, Jalen Hurts and all the Sean Mannion stuff isn't as good of a marriage as people are just kind of projecting and wish casting it to be. And Hurts is uncomfortable with under center stuff. What if the offensive line is not back to where it was and it's somewhere between where it was and then what it was last year?
They had 2 dudes go overseas to get stem cell treatment.
Yeah, good luck. And so it's like, if Hurts isn't comfortable with the timing based stuff with DeVonta Smith working more down the field against cornerback ones, maybe that just means a crap load of targets for Makai Lemon, right? Who's like, if you listen to any football guy talk about Makai Lemon, they're going to rant and rave about his work at the catch point. Everybody's so obsessed with how good he is at the catch point, which it's very cool because he's small. And so like to see him just completely mossing people over and over is pretty nuts. But I mean, like, that feels like a real thing where it's like, if the coach and the quarterback have confidence in him, it's very possible that the plan often is going to be, if you don't feel comfortable getting to that first read, quickly get to that second read. That's something Dan Schneier, my podcast co-host here, brought up, is that like, that is kind of the background for, I think, this offensive philosophy is like, you're reading 1 to 2 to 3 quickly. And so if you don't like 1, then you're going to 2 quickly. And I think Lemon is somebody who can present, if not like massive separation, at least a 50-50, 60-40 type of proposition pretty often, and then is also good with the ball in his hands. I think he's pretty underrated for fantasy.
I don't think there's a team more fascinating, I think, from a coaching change perspective than the Eagles, and the marriage of what they've done from a personnel and coaching stance this offseason. We haven't really gotten a lot of insight on what exactly Sean Mannion's bringing to the table, what he wants to do in terms of personnel and tempo. Obviously you move AJ Brown this offseason as well. So it's just like, kind of like, how do all these pieces fit together, and is it even what they want to do, right? Like, do they have the pieces? Is Hurts able to facilitate what the vision is, right? So it's like, I don't think any team is more fascinating considering like all the moving pieces. Then they have this awesome defense, right? Like, the defense is still going to be really good. And they've got like a pretty awesome schedule for most of the season. It's a bummer that they opened the fantasy playoffs with Seattle, Houston. So like they could be like a huge advance rate team that just like, then you get nothing. But they're a team that, like, I think has largely been undervalued from an upside perspective because they just have so much talent, right? Like this is the Howie MO. Like, this is why they got Lemon. I guarantee you Lemon was just the best player on their board. Like, he probably was for a number of teams. And they took
he knew he was trading AJ Brown too. So it's like,
right,
wow,
exactly.
you're just going to hand me a AJ Brown replacement with, they're different players, but
right.
they're both good after the catch. So there are some, ways that they can use Lemon to help replace Brown. And it just made what they were going to do anyway easier.
It's the same thing, because like when you look at the pieces for the Eagles, it's like this team is screaming to play more open, under center, like more 11 personnel stuff with everything they add. And that's, obviously what Lemon and even if Eli Stowers contributes as a rookie year. But like, is Hurts going to be the roadblock for that, right? It's the same
Mhm.
thing like when you see all the talk about the Panthers right now, right? And the Panthers are like, well, we got Chris Brazzell to like eat some cardio routes, but like, cool. Well, you're not going to have either offensive starting tackle to start the season, and like you have Bryce Young still. Like, are you going to be able to open it up to the degree like you want it to? Are you going to have this roadblock that comes back to the quarterback? And Hurts is a guy I think that we should give the benefit of the doubt to. I know he has restrictions, but you go back to college, like he's done nothing but still kind of perform like way above average, like and still been like a guy that wins games. And so the Eagles,
Hurts is cheap too.
general,
Like you can, just like you sit there and take Hurts, and then depending on what site you're on, you can do this at the 6-7 turn or the 7-8 turn. You just take both of them. Just take Hurts and Lemon. I mean, that's a pretty high upside stack where you're looking at, because I think these are spots that I like to find and then go the other way on, is where the market seems to really be confident about the way this ambiguous situation is going to play out. AJ Brown's gone. DeVonta Smith could be an absolute target dominant wide receiver 1, and that's kind of what the market thinks will happen because he's going in the early 3rd round. There's still some upside from there if he it has just an insane target share, but largely it's sort of priced.
Season.
Yeah, I mean, JSN, you'd take in the 3rd round.
I just love it because we're up to like 15 receivers that are this year's JSN, and it's like so like it's all the dudes that check boxes, right? It's like who plays in like a lower volume passing game that's going to play in like 1 to 2 wide receiver sets, and like it maybe gets like motion and play action added to their like portfolio this year, and it's like him, Ladd, Zay Flowers, like.
But I think enough of Lemon to think that is not as likely as the ADP on DeVonta Smith would indicate, but it's being paired with, I think, a really cheap price on Lemon, too cheap of a price on Hurts. Goddard is actually fairly cheap.
Yep.
Stowers is free now because there's talks of him maybe having a redshirt season. He's more of a best ball type, but he's kind of a roster clogger for redraft. But you can. I mean,
He's
and then
also a
frankly,
guy we should expect to be slow because like he's been playing tight end for 2 years.
Yeah.
He's a slot receiver. He needs Lemon to be so good that he can play outside so that Stowers can be their slot. That's really his path. But yeah, I mean, this whole offense outside of Smith is super cheap, and people are kind of playing it through the one guy, which I'm going to draft a little bit of Smith, but not a lot because I do think he's probably
there's
a little
a firewall
overpriced.
you have, like there's a finite window you're going to be able to draft him. Like at a certain time you just won't be able to. Whereas Lemon, you literally have like a pretty big air band of
For
saying,
sure.
like if I need to go ahead or below ADP, like you're not getting DeVonta Smith. Like maybe you get lucky and he gets like late 3rd round or something.
He doesn't really fall. Yeah, that's another thing with
you're
him.
Never...
Yeah. You never, like McBride sometimes is falling into the late 3rd, but I rarely see Smith fall.
I think the Lemon stuff makes sense, and I think he is a great pick. I don't necessarily think it detracts from the DeVonta Smith case. It might add more risk. I think that's realistic, and like the stuff I brought up with Matt, like there's risk with Smith clearly. We're going to talk about that whole range of receivers from Smith all the way down to like Tetairoa McMillan, who I think Pat is a lot higher on than maybe Rich and I are. But I think with Smith, just because we can laugh at this year's JSN and everything, but because there is this idea, and whether it's real or not, we're going to see that he could be so good, and we're about to see that unlocked, that you are just taking that for the upside because there's not very many players in that range. I think McConkey is a similar type of bet where it's like we can tell the story for like why it doesn't make sense, like why there's Zay Flowers on paper has less target competition. We've seen him do it. We've seen him produce. He's in an offense that will probably be better and everything. So like, isn't he just a better pick? There's plenty of guys like that you can make the case for. Freaking Jalen Waddle, like there's lots of guys.
Man.
I mean, there's like a 15 wide receiver pool there.
Yeah.
That also swerves into how gamers are drafting this year with running backs obviously being more aggressively drafted at the top this year.
But Smith might be the best one by far. That's the only thing.
Potential. Yeah, he was an incredible. He's the last wide receiver to win the Heisman Trophy, right?
Pretty much the most productive college football season we've ever seen that didn't come from like Corey Davis at Western Michigan or something. And it was like people will say, well, it was year 4. It's like, okay, well, look at his year 3 numbers. It's like the 7th best on a yard per route run rate. Like he did it the year before too. He led the team in receiving when he was playing with Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs, both top 12 picks, ahead of CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson. Jalen Waddle was on the team. They also had Najee Harris and Brian Robinson. there was like a
The
ridiculous
Heisman winning season was with Waddle, right? Waddle got
Yes, Waddle was
and,
there.
and he was like,
yeah.
do you
Waddle's the
remember
best one of
seeing-
those guys. he won the
Yeah.
Heisman with the best one of the
with
receivers, actually.
And do you remember that year, like that, because he went nuts, like against all the good teams, like he eviscerated them too. Like he didn't like beat like Wolford for like 240 yards or whatever. Like I mean, when they beat Ohio State in that game, like he dropped like 200 yards on them. Like,
yeah, so I think like it makes sense why he goes where he does, just because there literally is legendary upside. Like he might be.
There is. It does exist. Yeah.
Especially because I think wide receiver is kind of open after that opening tier too. Like there's a lot of fluidity, I think, for the gap that even goes between him, which is I think interesting this year in general. If you have a back half first round pick, I feel like there's a big difference this year picking in the back half this year versus a couple previous seasons where it wasn't as dominant at the top, where we have these two just Gibraltars at the top at running back, where the way Bijan and Gibbs are in terms of intersection of like how they play and their age apex. It's like these guys feel like just like crown jewels of like Marshall Faulk like players, right? Like
will be 101s again. Like
and then I think that just feels like such an advantage picking at the top this year versus the back, because you kind of have to tell yourself a story, even on the running backs, with running backs going higher, like in that range. It's like there's a lot of like teardowns for even the wide receivers that are the running backs that go in that area, and you feel like you're kind of pressed to do it, but you're just like, oh yeah, I could totally talk myself into a scenario like where Kenneth Walker fails, or Ashton Jeanty fails again, or Omarion Hampton, or Jonathan Taylor, Saquon again, and then you're talking about like the CD Lambs and Justin Jefferson again with Kyler, and it's like, yeah, we could tell ourselves on the pro side of that, that's why they're getting drafted there, but there's a pretty clear teardown case for all those guys too.
This is my favorite DeVonta Smith stat. We're going to take our first break here about 25 minutes late after this, but this has been really good stuff. So it's looking at first read targets, and DeVonta Smith and Nico Collins are the only players ranked top 15 in first read or yards per first read target in each of the past 3 seasons. So there's been consistency with it. And then if you combine all of that over the past 3 seasons, the only players who have a higher yard per first read target rate are Puka Nacua, George Pickens, Zay Flowers. He is really good. Nico Collins and Jameson Williams. He has basically the same rate as Jackson Smith-Njigba and Justin Jefferson is where DeVonta Smith is, and A.J. Brown at the highest first read target rate over the past 2 seasons of any player. So I think there's plenty of reasons to be really high on him, and I think both Eagles are great picks where they go. He's obviously really risky, but I think we're going to get to it in a moment. Look at this range of players. I think there's a lot of risk with a lot of the receivers that go in that range. Did you have something, or can we get?
Well, I'm just a little less high on Smith because of the potential for Lemon to kind of make that AJ Brown first read target stuff not just flow to Smith, but I do think that's a good shout where like
they have the highest
offense is designed
rate
around him.
They have
the highest combined rate.
The highest 2-player rate of any team.
Yeah, I mean, they were only throwing the ball to 2 guys.
They were only throwing the ball to Yeah.
I mean, there's only one good thing Kevin Patullo did last year, and it was the most random thing ever, and he just got Dallas Goedert a bunch of 1-yard touchdowns. Like, he was scheming up, like, shovel passes. He's like, wait, I get in my bag to get Dallas Goedert. Like, because they weren't even, like, they were just, like, crazy touches. Like, he had like, a rushing touchdown in the playoffs, so it was, like, a designed rushing play for I was like, what? Well, how does the one thing that Kevin Patullo did right was just, like, go into his bag on Dallas Goedert?
You've got to. All right, we're going to take our first break. I really want to talk about Casey Concepcion. I didn't want to leave that. We've got even more rookies to talk about that probably won't matter, but they might. And if they do, I think it'd be really fun after this break.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
All right, I'm going to throw, this is just terrible podcasting and terrible presentation, but I don't care. I'm going to throw up texts on the screen here. And it's just because this is the only place I have these stats compiled. Casey Concepcion, with the ball in his hands, is almost as fun as Casey Concepcion as a route runner. Everybody's so obsessed with his route running. He might have the all-green chart. I don't remember exactly, but I know Matt Harmon loved his route running. And that's very clear. Like, you watch the guy, he didn't...
Not all green. Comebacks was red. All green except one, which is actually what we want.
He didn't have massive production necessarily, but I do think that that's pretty easy to contextualize. He had the highest off-target rate overall and on throws down the field. But man, he's an incredible route runner, and I legitimately think he's almost as good with the ball in his hands. And so I compared him to Makai Lemon, and it's pretty much, I've got a buddy here who's like working on building out a model, and he was just like having a hard time with Concepcion because he doesn't look good from a data lens. And he just like couldn't believe me when I was like, I really think he's better with the ball in his hands. I think he's like almost as good as like Luther Burton or something like that with the ball in his hands. And the more that I looked into it, it's like he just wasn't used that way. Like when he got screens, though, he was used like down the field. At NC State, he was like just a slot guy, and they tried to kind of force him stuff, and he was really productive with that, with those opportunities. He just didn't get the downfield stuff. His next year, it was like all downfield stuff, and he shredded for the most part. He just had really inaccurate quarterback play, but he didn't get the roll catering stuff as much. It kind of fell off. But on his screen targets, higher missed tackle force rate, more yak than Lemon, who's really good at this stuff. That's why I compared the two of them. I think he's just so freaking good, and people don't realize. I think he legitimately could be the best receiver in the class. And I wanted to talk about Lemon because the schedule is really rough, and I wanted to transition this to a couple of the other rookies, and Cardinal Tate and Jeremiyah Love. And I'm kind of considering fading the rookies because like all the guys we talked about today, it's fun to talk about them. Most of them aren't even getting drafted in home leagues. You know, like 80-90% of the people who are listening to this, like don't even have to consider drafting Omar Cooper Jr.
Right.
Lemon is one who I do think is worth drafting. Like we talked about, he could come out with a bang in week 1 or whatever. Jordyn Tyson is too. I want to talk about the Saints more. Get back to Rich's point of them being one of the 3 undervalued teams. So don't let me move on completely from that because I do want to talk about Tyson and the Saints. But with Love and with Tate specifically, and Concepcion to a lesser extent, I don't think he's really going to get drafted much. But with those two, their schedule starts off really rough. I just did an episode with Dan where we talked about, we had Jared Smola on. Smola does great work. He made this fantasy football team environment score. And so teams that are not going to show up high in that are the Browns, Cardinals, and Titans. But then after we talked with Jared for about 40 minutes, Dan and I did another like freaking 2 hours where we looked at every single team. And the late season schedule for all these guys is really, really, really nice. And so I wonder if you might get like a huge discount on Cardinal Tate in season where he starts out slow because the early season schedule is rough. Particularly, there are a lot of teams that I think will get a lot of pressure on Cam Ward early in the season. And so it's like not going to be conducive to like these deeper timing based routes for Tate. And will probably be a lot of Wan'Dale Robinson. And so like, that's exactly what everyone is so scared of, is that it's going to be the Brian Daboll, Wan'Dale Robinson crap, you know? And if we get confirmation of that, I think everyone's going to lose their minds. If Cardinal Tate comes out and is averaging like freaking 4 receptions per game across the first month or two, and I think you might be able to buy him super cheap before a massive finish to the season. Same thing with Jeremiyah Love. Rich, you brought this up when you were on the show, where it's like, I don't think they're winning. Like, it's kind of like the Raiders, where it's like,
they got so screwed.
I don't think they're winning like any of their games to start out the year. Like their most winnable games through the
they're
first.
They're not favored in any game this season. They're the only team.
Yeah, that was something that Jared looked at that I thought was really interesting in his
well, you know, the thing is you know your opponents. Like the NFL doesn't like, there's no like scheduling quirk where like you have like, we know your opponents coming in. It's, you know, when and where you play the teams is what they schedule. And the fact that they just like they have 3 home games over the first 9 weeks. Like they got so boned, dude. Like they play in order. They go at Chargers, then one of their home games is Seattle, then at San Francisco, at the Giants, which whatever, then Lions, at Rams, Broncos, at Cowboys, at Seahawks, Rams, at Chiefs. Like what a nightmare! What a nightmare! Like it's absolutely brutal, man.
That is so brutal.
But the late season schedule is beautiful in theory. We don't know if it'll be Carson Beck or not. And it's kind of the same thing with the Titans.
We do know. Don't we know?
That's why, I mean, is Pat, like, so Pat thinks about this from like a best ball lens. Like, is Jeremiyah Love potentially one of these guys? Because you could put him with like a Gibbs, right? Pretty easily. Like, you have.
Sure, you can,
like,
yeah.
And it's like, is he one of these guys that maybe doesn't have like a super high advance rate? And maybe that's even false because if you're putting him with Gibbs, like you just, but like.
Right, you just get him through that way.
Yeah, you just get him through with Gibbs, but then maybe doesn't have necessarily a big payoff at his ADP, but then the final month like matters.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been especially from a best ball lens, over at Chip Chasing, we love to take wide receivers and zero running back drafts and stuff. And we're doing less of that this year. And I'm doing considerably less of that in my best ball stuff this year. But I think it's in part because, like, when you look at the rookie running backs, if you want to fade rookies, let's talk about the running back class, because I think that's where you can really kind of lean into that. And you have, okay, I'm having trouble finding these like big upside profiles later in the draft, but I do have Jeremiyah Love. What if I pair him with a David Montgomery or DeAndre Swift or, some of these guys who's like, yeah, it's not the most exciting thing ever. Tony Pollard later, it's like, yeah, that seems boring and not very fun, but you have the potential for Love to really dominate down the stretch where he has a very strong prospect profile. Is explosive, is a guy that you can kind of lean on, especially I think as he gets more comfortable in the offense, and can catch the ball. So I think he's a pretty good pick where he goes, but he might require, pairing him with guys who help get you through some down weeks. And you could end up feeling like, hey, in the third round, I'm like, it's week 3 or whenever they play the Rams, when they're at LA, you're like, I think I'm benching my third round pick this week. I could see you doing that and him being ultimately a guy who wins you the league if you can get to the championship with him. He has a lot of upside if the schedule does lighten up. And he's in a situation where, we talked about the Jets and Klubnik. I'm not looking forward to Cade Klubnik. I think that's going to hurt all the Jets bets you make. I think Geno's a lot more likely to facilitate production. I'm not 100% sure that Carson Beck being in there like really hurts them in a huge way. They're going to want to get a look at him. I hope they don't just completely hide him. Like you want to see what you have. And he's not like, he's not a great prospect, but he's not like a guy who I think nukes the offense in a bad way where, he's a pocket passer. He should be able to kind of get the ball to the guys we care about, which are mostly more underneath guys in McBride and Jeremiyah Love being the top 2 drafted Cardinals.
I want to show you this from Jared Smola. I think it's relevant with the Cardinals discussion. So he took from Vegas the implied totals and then the average game totals for every team across the season. And then he made shootout rates and low total rates based off the percentage of games that have an over-under of 48 or higher or 42 or lower. And so you see like Cowboys, all the teams you'd expect at the top. At the bottom, you see the Cardinals here, which is where you'd expect them. They're not implied for very many points. But their gross game percentage is way, way lower than these other teams. And they're the only team that has like multiple projected shootouts here. And I think it's just, they profile so much differently than the rest of these teams where it's like their implied point total is low, but they're also projected to get the doors blown off of them. Like,
well, and they play so many good offenses that inherently like have they play so many teams that have high point totals.
Right. Their spread in their games is larger than any other team. And if you look at the schedule, it's not necessarily that they play like they play good defenses. Some of the teams are good defenses, but it's more just like they're going to lose that game. They're going to lose that game.
They're going to lose that game to the Chiefs and to the Chargers, and but maybe they put up points also.
It might be like if it's better than we expect, it might be like last year.
The one worry with them compared to like because everyone's probably just like they draw the correlator of like what happened to them last year, and it's like, oh well, we're just gonna have the same run out, right? They're gonna have 50 dropbacks a game, and I think that there's been like a pretty top-down signal. Like I talked about this when I was on with you and Dan. Like they just want to play in rock fights. Like they're letting us know they want to be in rock fights. Like you hire Mike LaFleur and Nathaniel Hackett. When free agency opens, you sign 4 offensive linemen. You sign Tyler Algier before you even know you're going to use the number 3 pick on Jeremiyah Love. Not only do you
at least you hope they knew.
Well,
you hope they knew.
I don't think they did. I don't think that their mind is with them. But you sign Tyler Algier, who's like a completely like a battering ram style running back. He's a good at what he does. Like don't love, but like Tyler Algier is like not going to change the dynamic of an offense. And then you use pick 34 on Chase Basantas too. Like they want to just like play in as many high variance games as they possible. That's a bummer with some of these hires and some of these teams that are going to be bad this year. Like we talk about the Jets, and it's like the Jets have potential to be a fun team because their defense looks terrible on paper.
Yeah,
and like they could be winging it around. And they have fun young players. When I look at like the Dolphins and the Cardinals and the Raiders, I look at the hires they made, and I'm like, these teams are probably not going to be good. good, but their coaches just want to just drag games into the mud and try to win some accidental win. They weren't trying to get accidental wins, high variance wins. Like like the Packers last year lost games to the Panthers and the Browns because they don't run any freaking plays and they don't have, like, that's how these teams want to play this year. They're telling us that.
And it makes sense for them. It doesn't make sense. Yes. Hey, LaFleur, stop doing that. You're losing to the Browns.
You can't be losing games to the Flacco Browns too. Like, it's like
this LaFleur can do it because they're going to be horrible. So
right.
But yeah, I tend to agree with you. This is not a team that I'm real interested in, like, stacking up a lot of pieces of. It's kind of like get your Cardinal. And then I have taken Love with McBride a little bit, but McBride's fallen enough. I'm not doing that so much. So it is more like I could see, a couple of these guys really paying off because they beat, what you would project in terms of target share or, their personal efficiency is really good. And in the case of Love, I could see that being the case, right? But yeah, it's not an offense that I'm overly excited about, in part because I do think the market kind of thinks fondly of the Cardinals because of last year with that really high drop back rate. They were less efficient with Jacoby Brissett than they were with Kyler Murray, but they just passed a lot more. And I don't think they're going to play like that this year.
No, 100% not.
I want to talk about the Seahawks schedule here with Jadarian Price. I'm curious where you're at with him. You said fade the rookie running backs, generally speaking. And I'm kind of low on Price and his profile. I don't love the Charbonnet. I mean, I like Charbonnet, so I'm glad to hear that he's doing well. But, like, for Price's perspective, like, it doesn't feel good that Charbonnet might be a lot healthier than expected, might start the season out on the team, like, actually playing. But I do think if Price gets going here, he's got a schedule that could be conducive to a lot of big games. So I don't know about the Patriots really in week one, what that game script's going to look like, but they could beat the crap out of them again. And the Patriots are, if anything, like, you can run on them with explosive plays to the outside. We saw that all year last year. We saw that in the Super Bowl. And then they are going to destroy the Cardinals, which is a game where you probably could get your rookie running back some touches. And then they might do the same thing to the Commanders. And then it's like some potential shootouts against the Chargers and 49ers. Broncos, we think of as scary because it's a good defense. But again, it's like if there's any way to beat this defense is with the running backs. And then another potential shootout against the Chiefs. And then you have Bears, Cardinals, Raiders, which I just feel like are pretty good spots for a running back before the Week 11 bye. And so it does set up to me where, like, maybe he comes out really, really hot and you have, like, a sell window because it's kind of gross after that. Like, the fantasy playoffs are particularly gross for the Seahawks. I'm curious if you had any thoughts on that because he's not somebody I've been drafting at all, but I was like, he might be – I'm trying to kind of cater these discussions towards managed leagues. I'm curious if Price might be somebody where – the swing in perceived value might be really drastic with him because he's a rookie and you might be able to sell him really, really high.
With all these rookies generally, I think part of the reason that they can be really good picks is that we just don't know how good they are. And we're wrong sometimes. And like, we're real low on how good we're like, he's this good. He turns out to be this good. And like, he's awesome. Oh man. Okay. I think that, with Price, the error bars have to be wider. We didn't see him play much in college. Like, if Price came out and was really effective, I don't think I would be selling high. Like, he's a guy where I have a lot of questions about what his profile really even is, but he looks like he could be an explosive runner. I mean, if he was getting there on the back of, like, a bunch of long touchdowns, sure. But if he's kind of catching the ball a little bit, they're using him at the goal line. He hasn't even had that many long runs, and he's been quite productive. I'd be sending offers for Jadarian Price at that point. I think he's just a player. When you're taking him, you have to be okay with there being a lot of risk of this dude might stink. But I do think he's a high ceiling pick. For redraft, it would really come down to the price. These types of players tend to be a little bit cheaper in kind of the home league setting. He's going in the 6th round in the FFPC main event. And I'm comfortable with him there. But yeah, I mean, if he's a little cheaper, like 7th or, mid 7th, let's say in a home league, I think you draft him. Even with Charbonnet not playing, he might be a type of player you have on your bench for a couple weeks and you're not ready to trust in your starting lineup yet. But I think you'll know pretty quickly, like, if he can't take advantage of a backfield, it's probably him and George Halani to start the year. Then maybe there's a reason he was a backup in college.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen a lot of the people running with the quotes, like they view him as like in the Kenneth Walker role, kind of, and like a lot of people treated that as a negative. But I think it makes sense when you look at him from a profile stance, because when Kenneth Walker played last year, like Seattle just largely ran the football. Like it's easily when you look at Jadarian Price and say like this guy is a 200-pound running back. He's got the fewest amount of touches for any first-round running back to ever be drafted in the first round.
Will, yeah,
or will probably, yes. But like doesn't have a pass catching profile. But I think he shows on film that he can catch the football. But like he's awful in pass protection. That's like all the stuff Kenneth Walker was bad at. So like people are like, oh, this is terrible. And I'm like, well, it's kind of sets him up for at least just to say year one, hey, we just want you to be good at this. And then you look at the other two players, Helani and Emmanuel Wilson, to open the year. And yeah, there could be a situation where Helani is the passing down back, even after Charbonnet got hurt. We saw Helani, they only ran the ball 12.8% of the time when Helani was on the field last year. So he could be like this dude that is just on the field, like getting hollow snaps that don't matter, right? And just blocking that.
Yeah.
And then the big factor will just be like who gets the goal line carries, because Emmanuel Wilson is a 220-pound guy. He could be
right.
So if we end up in a situation where there's just like Price is like the between the 20s guy, and he's not on passing downs, he's not getting goal line carries, he's just going to have like 5.5 yards per carry and like just not catch passes or score touchdowns, and we're gonna be like, what the hell? And like kind of like how people were mad at Walker last year, like, come on, Seattle, just play Walker more.
Yeah.
But then the other thing you have to factor in too is that Seattle has that week 11 bye. And that puts right on Charbonnet's timeline, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's like Charbonnet coming back for the final 7 games. And if he just automatically inherits like the thumper role, then like you're losing the thumper role for like the crux of the season, where we need touchdowns to kind of matter for our teams. So it's a little bit tougher to kind of hash him out. But it's funny, as I was like down on him from like the whole prospect profile stance, but the way people are running with these quotes about the Walker stuff is just kind of like, now that actually makes sense to use him that way, and like everyone's down about it.
Jadarian Price is more to me of that best ball play where like I need to find all the production I'm going to get here in July or whenever I'm drafting, and I don't get a chance to hit waivers and find kind of RB2 production. He profiles as kind of more of that fantasy RB2 that you can probably find over the course of the year, and he's not like this locked and loaded, guy from the start. Like I was saying, you might even want to stash him. His outlook gets kind of murkier once Charbonnet gets back. So I would want to discount from that 6th-round price, I think, in home leagues. But he is the type of player that I think does tend to fall in home leagues, because people will be like, what am I even getting here? This seems like a low floor proposition. So with a discount, I would be in the middle of the 6th. You can probably do better.
And all those guys are kind of, I know it feels rich from like a stance of like where you're taking these guys in totality, because they do kind of, some of these guys butt up against the strength of the wide receivers that we've kind of talked about, like that bucket of wide receivers. But when you're looking at historical like trends, like the guys that beat the running back dead zone or beat like this RB2, RB3 fringe area, they typically are rookie contract players. And we have like that pocket of Quinshon Judkins, Scatabo, TreVeyon Henderson, Bhayshul Tuten, and even Bucky,
which I'm pretty
Irving,
into generally.
Those guys all kind of go in there. It's just kind of how you have structurally built your rosters, where in years past, we've been kind of taking receivers early and then getting one of those guys paired with like an anchor running back, right? And this year we're kind of doing the inverse, where we're doing like running back, or 2 running backs in opening 3 rounds, and then just bludgeoning that pocket of receivers we're talking about. So we're kind of bypassing these guys. But
I'm not bypassing those guys. I'm taking a lot of Tuten and Judkins I'm taking, and Henderson I would like to take, but he probably needs to fall before I can really go hard there. But those two, and then Scatabo goes above them, and I am taking Scatabo as well. But like compared to Tuten, right? Like with Price, Tuten could just hit the ground running. He could just be the Jaguars starting running back week 1 through week 17 and absolutely smash. Where I think with Price, you're kind of like, well, he was the starter clearly, but then Charbonnet comes back, and it took him a couple weeks to kind of really matter. Like even the receiving profile, I think on Tuten is a lot stronger than Price. Price it's murky, but still, those backs that go above Price, I just think they're just better bets for the early season production. I don't think have any lower ceilings than Price does.
One thing I would point you towards is, again, this from Jared here. It surprised me the Vegas numbers on the Jags and the Chargers are so low. I feel like those teams, everybody in the fantasy community is enamored with.
I talked about the other, we talked about the teams that popped in the regression series as like blind bets, and dollar for donuts, every article the Jaguars showed up as a fade, like a team to be skeptical on this year.
Yeah.
I
just want to show the Seahawks are higher. The Seahawks are implied for more points than the Jags. Like, I don't know. It just really surprised me.
And I love Cohen. We've talked about Cohen on this show a bunch. And like, that's the factor I keep coming back to is just Liam Cohen. And I like their passing game more. And if the passing game is good, it kind of lifts all tides. But they relied on so much turnover fortune last year. I mean, Etienne and Trevor Lawrence were 1 and 2 in fantasy points scored, fantasy points off turnovers. Etienne by like a wide margin. But when you look at the end of the year when they were number 2 in the NFL in offensive points per game, and they had the largest point differential. They were middle of the league in yards per play. They were middle league in efficiency. And it's just like, man, they really ran hot in terms of turnovers. And then obviously some of the quarterbacks they played against, and like they're another team, things open up, but like their starting schedule, like they have a bye in week 7, but like, dude, they open Browns, Broncos, Patriots, Bengals, Eagles, Texans. Like that's not very strong, especially for a guy like Tuten. Like, you're like, oh man, what spot, like in a managed league, am I going to be like bullish on putting him in like a lineup? Like obviously you're a favorite against the Browns week 1, so you maybe take those chances for the implied total, but like the rest of those are like pretty brutal spots. To put him in like a managed league lineup.
It might be. I think that the thing with Tuten, that it's like he could be the clear starter on an offense that is, scoring points and is actually pretty well designed in the running game. I mean, Bucky Irving broke out in a Liam Cohen offense. I believe in Liam Cohen's ability to get rushing production as well as scheme up a good passing game. So, yeah, I think Tuten.
The Jags' run game sucked last year.
The workload.
Well, the run game was.
The Jags' run game sucked last year, and it was still a good place for fantasy running backs.
It was still good. Well, because they had one guy get 80% of the touches. Like that's the rub. Like, can we get that? I mean, we could play for it.
Tuten was also top 20 among running backs in expected fantasy points when in the red zone only. That's 2 straight years that Liam Cohen has had multiple running backs be top 20 in expected fantasy points.
Yeah, that's where he schemes a lot of his receiving stuff for running backs, because Etienne's not are we supposed to call him HN now? I forget like what the statue what we're supposed to be doing this year.
I love it because all the fantasy communities kind of come around on trying that at least, and all the people who are coming back for drafts can be like, what the hell are you?
I'm saying Etienne. I'm communicating to let people know who I'm talking about. So I'm saying Travis Etienne.
Because Bijan and Tyrod corrected us, and they were like, we don't care though. Like, is it one of those situations where like, here's the real thing, but like also feel free to keep just going with Etienne.
How much could he care if we're like, he's on his second contract? You know what I mean? We have to learn on the first contract if he really cares, would be my assumption. But
all that he said was like, that's what people called me. That's my name. He's like, but I mean, at a certain point, it was just easier to go by Etienne because that's what it looks like.
Because he had 2 of those as a rookie too. Obviously he had the sweet designed wheel route. I think you tweeted it, Jacob, against the Jets. I think it was against the Jets. And then he had like early in the season, he had a little screen touchdown against the Bengals. But that's where he's historically used his running backs in the passing game, is when they get into the into the money zone.
He's great with all the misdirection type stuff.
Yeah, I think the big thing for Tuten, the biggest thing for Tuten, the biggest obstacle is just where is he in pass pro from year 1 to year 2. That's going to be the biggest. That's going to be the biggest hurdle for Snapchat, because even as a rookie, he had as many top 24 games for fantasy football than Chris Rodriguez has had his whole career. Like, we're not.
That's what I'm saying, man.
I'm not looking at this whole like Chris Rodriguez like Kentucky angle, but like I do think there are obviously hurdles. Like, one, the Jaguars had a bad running game last year. I think the offensive line is bad. They're gonna have worse like starting field position this year just because like they were number 1 with a bullet in drives that started in opposition territory. So like we know there's gonna be regression there. So it's like, do we just kind of like get this situation where he's another guy like kind of is a touchdown or bust type of player?
Yeah, I think that's
I could see that,
especially with the schedule. Like, I'm pretty nervous.
But I do think on those builds that we talked about, like, you not even from a best ball stance, getting into managed league stance, like where you are maybe in a pocket where like you don't love to force like one of those running backs, and you're like, hey, you know what, I do want Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb, or maybe double up in that zone. You take a Brock Bowers and you're chasing running back a little bit. Like those builds where he makes sense, like those are still the guys that we're talking about, even being kind of down on like maybe the negative outcome. Like these are still guys historically like you at least want to take swings on versus like a Tony Pollard or like a Jalen Warren.
100%. I mean, I'm annoyed with my fellow drafters that I don't get to make the case of how are we taking Tony Pollard over this guy, because everyone's gotten too sharp with pricing in the upside, and we have to pay for it now with Tuten. He goes in the 5th round, which is, I think, where he should. I'm taking him a lot actually in the 5th round, so I think that the price is
Tony
fine.
Pollard with these guys, right? Like,
yeah,
I remember, Pat, you and I did the show last year, and I was telling you how like I accidentally just like luck boxed into ETN, Javonte Williams and teams because I was taking them on teams I drafted RJ, Harvey, and Henderson.
Right,
like,
and then the other guys were the hits. Yeah,
but that like you were looking for that bridge, right? Like when you're taking like a Tuten, and I laid out that schedule. Like you can have just like a fall bet and say, come back and get Tony Pollard with him the round after or 2 rounds after, and say,
Jordan
like, hey,
Mason,
here's my boring
J.K.
ass
Dobbins.
Here's my boring ass floor of points, and like maybe it turns into something
like that. Yeah, but I agree. I think with Tuten, if you're taking on the risk of he's a committee back, doesn't necessarily even have like a ton of receptions in his profile. I think you can do that, but it's not like he's a receiving specialist. The offense maybe regresses.
And if they're throwing to him, it's like probably a detriment just because they have like 5 dudes.
They got so many other weapons. Yeah, that's true. So like there's definitely a floor here that hurts you, especially in managed, because you don't just have the touchdown slot into your lineup when I think he will score some. But I also do think the upside is worth it here, where you have a guy who is competing with Chris Rodriguez. He was actually quite good in success rate last year on a limited sample, 87 carries, but his success rate was really strong. And they've actually talked about, Liam Cohen just had a quote saying like he was so conscientious about ball security because that was a red flag coming out.
Yep.
And that now they're talking to him saying, hey, like you got that, now go out there and be you. He said the exact quote is, okay, now Tuten, you got it. You understand it more. Now just go be you. Like, go do what you got to do here. Go be special. That's who you are. And we're definitely expecting Tuten to have a big year for us. I think that there is potential for us like a month from now to be like, Tuten's like, he did it. He won the job. He's clearly the starter here. And getting that in the 5th round, even if the offense regresses, is awesome. And it's not like we're not having to, now running backs can disappoint in any given week, of course, but it's not like, ooh, what's the matchup here? It's like, no, I just got a 3rd round value in the 5th and I'm starting him, Yeah,
I mean, it's funny though doing that series and like having the Jaguars consistently pop up because like I'm just such a Cohen honk that's like, oh wow, like it's like you always and we had kind of wiped the slate like the first half of the season. They were awful too. It's just like, oh yeah, that sample existed too. We're only running with the back half.
I think the role context on Tuten is definitely important. Like he was almost used just as a short yardage back, and it was very clear that they were like emphasizing specific things.
Yeah,
building out the role for year 2 is what it looks like, and Liam Cohen has offered confirmation of that. I am super in on Tuten because of the upside, but I think this is an important conversation to have to acknowledge the downside.
The downside is real. Yeah,
I want to talk to you about this after our break. I think this is really a funny comparison, but to me, this is probably going to rub you the wrong way. He's like fancy Bill Krosky Merritt. He's like fancy RJ Harvey in some sense, except I think he'll have way more opportunity out of the gate than Harvey does.
The RJ Harvey one, I think, is a better comp.
I'll get to the Bills comp in a second. So we're going to take a break real quick, and then I want to talk about some of these other year 2 backs. And at some point, we are going to talk about Jordyn Tyson. I promised we would do that. We will do that. But first, we're going to take our
stretch it. Just keep teasing it.
It's a tease. Yeah, we're just wait. This Tyson discussion is going to be awesome. But we're going to take our second break. 67 minutes into the podcast. We'll be right back.
You think you understand how this business works, but you don't.
I now know why Monty was so stressed.
What's the plan here?
Landman. New season now streaming. Only on Paramount Plus.
Okay. I compared Tuten to Bill. They're both unproven. In fact, I mean, Bill did give us 800 yards and 8 touchdowns on the ground. They're both guys who the fantasy community, one way or another, you're going to find people who are enamored by them. And there were interesting collegiate profiles. Obviously, Tuten was picked much higher, is the better athlete. Commanders are another one of these teams where it's like, really? They're implied for more points per game than the Jaguars? But they are, just barely. They have a really high shootout rate, according to Smola here, which, by the way, this is a free read on draftsharks.com.
Nice.
Which, again, shootout rate is the percentage of games with an over-under of 48 or more points. They're extremely high. I think it was tied with the Rams for the 6th highest rate is where you find the Commanders. So apparently Vegas is buying this David Blau stuff. I don't know if that's what it is or if it's just their schedule.
Yeah, they have a pretty good looking schedule. Jane Daniels coming back. I mean, they were in the NFC Championship game 2 years ago.
They also, though, they make me a little bit nervous for all this I'm saying about Bill and everything. They start out with some really tough teams. And I could see them, especially the first like 2 or 3 games, if they're playing from behind a lot, those are Rachaad White games, right? And if we get into that momentum where it's like White is just kind of playing better because Bill's struggling because of the game script and stuff, then it's just like Bill goes away kind of, right?
Yeah.
That's reasonable. I think Tuten, the team really wants him to matter. So I do think he's clearly a better bet than Bill. But I do think he's kind of like these guys where it's like there's a clear passing down back. Look, I know it's going to annoy people, but look, Quint Allen is a 6th offensive lineman, and he's going to be on the field over Bill over Tuten almost always. They love him, dude. They love him just as much as Bill, just for completely different reasons, but they love the way that he plays. They always rant and rave about him since they drafted him, and that's exactly what he was really good at in college too. And so unless he gets hurt, I just don't think the Bill role, or God dang, I don't think the Tuten role is expanding that much.
You're really trying to make this happen. I tend to agree with you about LaQuint Allen playing on 3rd down and stuff, but I do, the bet here for Tuten is that you're getting Chase Brown, at a higher price than we paid for Chase Brown, but I think frankly with a better collegiate profile than Brown had, and guy who played more as a rookie despite not playing a ton as a rookie. So, there's a little bit more to go on with the Tuten bet. Obviously, the Brown bet was an awesome one and paid off really, really well. But, Brown catches the ball, but he does so more as kind of a guy who plays on 1st and 2nd down as opposed to being like a true 3-down guy. Like they're going to have a 3rd down back there even this year. And that's fine. I think for the cost that you're paying for Tuten. What I worry about with Corey Krosky-Merritt is that, like last year, he's not even the clear lead runner. And I think, like, fundamentally, he just has a much, much weaker profile than Tuten, mainly because Tuten's profile is really sneaky good. He was an absolute college workhorse. He peaked with a 94% backfield dominator rating, which Blair Andrews has shown over at RotoViz to be pretty impactful, especially for the later guys where it's like the entire backfield just gets handed off to a player. Tells you a lot about how trusted he was. He had an elite number over his career as well, at 81%. Basically, every single year that Tuten was playing in college for 2 different schools, he was the backfield. And he catches the ball pretty well. 1.27 yards per route run is solid. He profiles as this breakaway runner who can catch the ball pretty well, but you might not trust with like the full workload, like close comps, Kenny Gainwell, Amir Abdullah, Tevin Coleman, Jeremy McNichols, Tyjae Spears, Ito Smith, Michael Carter, RJ Harvey, and Devontae Freeman. And so it's like, yeah, a lot of these guys, they never got treated as true lead backs, but the times that, some of them did, it worked out pretty well, or we saw it in flashes. Like, what if we gave this guy more work, So where I look at Tuten, he has the explosiveness. He has the pass catching at least enough. He has the ability to be a workhorse, at least in college. What did I kind of most want to see from him as a rookie? I mean, I drafted him a ton, so I would have liked to see him absolutely crushed. That didn't happen. But given that it was off the table, I love that he was consistent and took care of the ball, and that they're like, okay, you got that down. Now we'll go be more explosive. We want to see more explosiveness. Like, that is an awesome place for a prospect like this to be, because so many of these guys, they never trust enough to actually give a bunch of touches. I think he's earned that trust, or at least I think there's a chance worth taking in the 5th round of fantasy drafts that he's earned that trust, and you get workhorse usage, at least for stretches this year. I think that is in the range of outcomes. That's what makes me really excited about him. I struggle to see that with Bill, where I think Rachaad White's going to have a role probably all year. I think you could see Katron Allen mixing in as a secondary runner, much like Chris Rodriguez did last year. I think Bill really profiles as more of a boom bust explosion runner who doesn't catch the ball especially well, and that's what he looked like as a rookie too. They're talking about using him more in the passing game, and maybe they do, but I think Tuten with the college profile just has more upside.
I've got him at RB20, so I'm actually very, very high on him. I did want to just kind of play devil's advocate a little bit, because when I looked at the schedule, it did scare me, where it's like if he's struggling. So it's a player who I think for all that you said about him being a college workhorse and everything, that's real, but a lot of people don't realize that or care. And so if it's like, well, last year's data wasn't good and he didn't give us explosive plays, and then we're 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks into the season, he's averaging 3.6 yards per carry or whatever, like people are just going to freak out. And maybe that's not that big of a deal. But I do think of this as like
he's
a
definitely a dude I'm going to be like honing in on if he starts slow to try to get.
Yes.
Like I said, I'm looking at that Jaguars layout from like them popping as a team to maybe kind of like, all right, there's going to be some regression here. And then you look at this opening schedule and then it does clear up. So like, especially if a gamer took him as their RB2 or something, and I can throw them a bone of like, this dude's, you're going to start him over Tuten this week. Like you're not going to play him against the Eagles. I don't need him. So like, he's definitely going to be on my radar to like, if the first month this team just isn't as good as they were to end last year and the run game is still where it was, to maybe try to come in and say, all right, that's how sneak it. I just
have a hard time playing these types of games where I'm just like, give me the player who I think is gonna crush. And yeah, maybe if he doesn't crush, I'll double down and I'll go trade for him. As long as he gets enough touches, right? As long as I would take inefficient, 15 touch games from Bhayshul Tuten.
Also, caveat, if he's getting ETN's workload or HA's workload, like there's no worries. It's just that we're not projecting that on him.
Yeah,
really.
That's actually the part I'm more concerned about, is that he gets like 8 carries and 1 target in week 1. I'm like, oh boy.
Yeah. Or
it's gonna be bad.
they face all these good run defenses to open the year, and Cohen has religion, because I think he is a smart enough coach where he's just like, hey, we're not going to run the ball on these guys. But the strength of our team is it's Trevor Lawrence, it's these 3 wide receivers, getting Brent.
These 4 wide receivers,
the Travis Hunter involved, and I just think that they might look at it like that and say like we need to throw, man. Like we're not running the ball on these guys.
I think the Parker Washington slappies might look like super right early on, because look
at BTJ.
Yep,
dude, BTJ is going against Denzel Ward, Patrick Surtain, Christian Gonzalez, DJ Turner, Quinyon Mitchell, and Derek Stingley the first 6 games.
And then he gets the Colts in week 8. And the Ravens in week 9. They also have good corners. The Tennessee Titans have some good young corners. Like, it's pretty rough the whole way, but especially early on. Yeah, I think Tuten makes sense as a
But that's been the one hesitation for me, even with Lawrence, because, and I know Dan's not on the show to defend, Lawrence being like QB3 or whatever Dan has. But Lawrence is a guy, he's not going to rush your 9 touchdowns again either. But like even looking at Lawrence, it's that pocket of guys that he goes against, because that's like a hotbed of like viable QBs, right? And it's just like, man, am I better off with a Brock Purdy or Bo Nix? I'm thinking this from a managed league stance, like not a best ball stance. Like, because to start the year, you're going to be like, all right, like how bullish am I even plugging him into my lineup in some of these spots? They're all going to be spots like when Pat does the walkthrough and I do the worksheet, we're going to be like, it's not a glowing spot to like be like, he's not going to like, you can play him in maybe like DFS tournaments and stuff, but it's like, we're not going to be projecting like ceiling outcomes for those
That's a good
games.
point.
So and I look at it from like where quarterbacks are going this year, and it's like, dude, I look at Jared Goff's opening schedule, and if I fly against the sun and get boxed out of QB, I can get a Goff or a Baker Mayfield, right? And maybe not have to push the trigger, or even like he's going heads up with like Brock Purdy, right? Like, so
yeah, I mean, you could get by with Willis for a while, if you needed to. There's quarterback values this year. I'm not even a Willis guy. I think he probably gets benched
Jaguars
because
the
team's going to be so bad. But
those fascinating teams, man, just really fascinating team.
Do we have any RJ Harvey thoughts? Ryan Heath went on about a 5-minute tirade the other day on why he thinks RJ Harvey's super underrated, and he does honestly profile pretty similarly to somebody like Tuten. I don't think he'll have as big of a rushing role early on, but it's like he wasn't as good as people wanted him to be in year 1. But I think because we got to see it more, then people are just like, oh, he's terrible. And it's like, he might not be terrible. He might have just come from this non-traditional running scheme, and he's sort of new to playing running back. And it might just take him time for the game to slow down for him. I know, Reeves, you were really worried about him coming into last year for that reason, that like it might take time for him to adapt to the NFL. And that's basically Ryan's point, is like, if he's obviously a talented athlete. He did give us explosive plays, especially in the receiving game and everything. He looked good at times. What if it's just better this year?
What's funny is he's still kind of roundabout worked out for fantasy, because like, at the end of the year, he had 4 RB1 scoring weeks, the final 5 weeks when you got to play him. So like he still got there. It was just really bad. Like we talked about with we don't care if like a guy has the workload, right? Especially at running back. We just care about opportunity. Like just give our dudes opportunity. All these efficiency stats are fun to talk about. One, we know that they're not super sticky anyways. He was a guy though, I think that was just worried from his profile of like where he got his yards in college and that Gus Malzahn scheme, and then coming to the NFL. It's like, dude, you're just not going to be able to operate in that type of capacity in the NFL, even with the Denver Broncos. And they were one of those teams that completely saw it and they flipped because their pass rate over expectation, like after the Dobbins injury, they were just like, we're just going to throw it all the time. Like, just we'll do that. The bummer is that they had Jonah Coleman, who is like one of these guys that is a wild card because he's one of these guys like is just like a high success rate guy. And we didn't even get like into the Kerrane Allen portion of the Commanders backfield. It's like these are guys that aren't like
that is part of my worry with Bill though.
Yeah,
sure.
It's these guys are the types of guys like what coaching staffs love because they're not going to rip off 25-yard runs, but you know what Coleman and Kerrane Allen do? They turn a lot of 0 1-yard runs into 3 and 4-yard gains. They turn a lot of 4-yard runs into 7 and 8-yard gains. They don't give you the explosives, but like they just do a lot of things well. They're good in pass protection. Like they do just all the dirty shit. And it's like how these guys you look up and you're like, why does this guy have the snap share? He's not scoring fantasy points. He's road blocking my guy that is doing all the fun shit. And like, I'm not getting fantasy
Why
points.
is Peyton Barber playing?
We did this with like, to a degree with Kareem Hunt to like a worse version of this, but like coaches love these guys, man, like these types of guys. And Jonah Coleman, I think, is one of these players. I think he's going to be behind the 8 ball to start the year. It's clearly going to be, I think they're going to start this thing and then compartmentalized fashion where it's Dobbins in the, tertiary ground game. And then, Harvey's doing his extension of the pass game, what he was doing at the start of last year. And they're seeing where he is as a runner and how much they can flesh that out. But anytime I think Coleman gets on the field, he's going to be a guy I think that earns more reps as it goes on. Like, I just feel like he's that type of player. And that's what throws a wild card in here because we saw dudes like Tyler Bidet getting like worked in.
Yeah.
Sean Payton can't help himself, man.
Yeah.
Like, and this is a player I think is a genuinely like solid prospect in Jonah Coleman.
Yeah.
Harvey was more boom bust, and I think profiled is kind of a boom bust runner coming out, and then was boom bust, and they bring back Dobbins, and then they have Coleman, who, like you're saying, is probably going to be more of like the hard hat lunch pail type of runner. Anyway, so there's a couple different guys who are probably going to be more consistent than Harvey, which makes him a little bit scary. Is he just kind of an ancillary runner who catches the ball and you don't know when to start him? That's my concern with him. I'm drafting him actually quite a bit in best ball. He's my 3rd highest drafted running back, where I'm like, hey, sometimes he's going to have cool long plays and score some touchdowns.
He's a great pick on DraftKings, I think.
Yeah, so I'm in on kind of the idea of RJ Harvey. If I have to predict which weeks it happens, I get less interested, but I'm not out. I just think, like, get ready to be frustrated in managed leagues with RJ Harvey. I would want at least a bit of a discount relative to the best ball price on him. I've taken, like, in the main event, we had a choice between him and Jonathon Brooks, and we took Jonathon Brooks.
I was just about to ask you about Brooks.
So Brooks, he's been moving up. They're now a full round apart. That was part of the reason I was like, this is probably the last time we get the chance to make this decision. Let's take the guy who's not going to be available here again. But I mean, I just think for managed leagues, Brooks is a lot cleaner. Like, he's either going to have a role to begin the season, or they're still not going to trust that he's healthy, and you probably move on and be like, well, I wasted my 7th round pick. That sucks. But, I think the weeks when to start Jonathon Brooks, like, to start Jonathon Brooks. You're not guessing. I just think there's a lot more guessing that's going to come with Harvey.
I dug into like bell cow type stuff, and it's arbitrary, but I used 20 touches. And so like the number of games where they got 20 touches and how they performed in those games. And the Dave Canales stuff really stands out. So in 2025, his Rico Dowdle had 6 of these games, which is a really high number. That's more than Jahmyr Gibbs. And he was the running back 5 in terms of production in those games, averaging 19 fantasy points per bell cow game.
He was projecting awesome. I kept having to raise him in my ranks, being like, wait, seriously? Like, I'm doing RB6 Rico Dowdle this week?
Yeah, for real. And the year before was Chuba Hubbard, had 6 bell cow games and almost identical production in those games, running back 5, almost 20 fantasy points per game.
Well, the other reason you're open to for Jonathon Brooks, I think more so than a Harvey in the Sean Payton scheme, is that Dave Canales has kind of shown, like, if you are the hot hand, like, he will lean into it, because that's how Hubbard broke out in the first place. So like, he's kind of leaned into it, saying like, hey, if you are the dude, like, we will play you.
Yeah, Dowdle, they clearly still like Hubbard, and they used him. He kind of became the lead back again in the playoff game. but Dowdle, when he was rolling, they just fed him.
Yeah. I don't know if you noticed, Rich, but I threw up, while you're talking about success rate guys with Jonah Coleman, I threw up Chris Rodriguez stats on the screen.
Another one of those guys.
Just to kind of troll Pat because of the whole Tuten thing here. I'm a little bit nervous that if the run game falters early, that we might see more Chris Rodriguez. Like if their line is just getting dominated, if the line's getting dominated against those teams.
In terms of just like success rate, those guys tend to get the boost, like the short distance runners get the bonus, because Tuten was even that far down on it. But that's what I think what made Bill Krosky.
Yeah, his success rate is a couple percent lower.
Because Krosky Merritt matched Chris Rodriguez too, but like it helps being in that role, being in that like kind of rushing only role.
For audio listeners, it also
helps me next to a mobile quarterback.
Yeah. For sure. Since he entered the league, Rodriguez ranks second behind only Kyron Williams in success rate, and he's second behind only Devon Achane in yards after contact per rush, which is pretty crazy because he's not a guy who's ripping out big plays. So he's just like consistently getting yards after contact per rush. Real quick before we leave this conversation.
Tuten is 47% according to Next Gen, which is a little bit higher than Rodriguez, but it's smaller sample.
We just turned into an ambiguous backfield show.
Yeah. We're basically just talking about all of the young players, and
a
lot of them are in ambiguous situations because we don't know exactly where they fit in yet. I've got the Denver Broncos schedule up on the screen, so it's interesting to me thinking about how this backfield might unfold. You hate to say it, but like until we see him make it to this point in the season, I don't necessarily know if we're going to have J.K. Dobbins at this point in the season. Looking at Week 11. And from that point on, they face some really bad teams where the running backs might be getting a lot of touches in those games. And I think that's interesting. And then early in the season, they face a lot of really good teams where it could be they're teams that I think are good enough to actually put pressure on the Broncos defense. So you got Patrick Mahomes, then Trevor Lawrence, then Matthew Stafford, then Brock Purdy, then Justin Herbert. I mean, Sam Darnold's like the worst quarterback you're facing in the first 6 weeks. So maybe we get more shootouts than we expect for this team. Maybe that's kind of an RJ Harvey thing. I could see spike weeks there for Harvey.
Yeah.
Late in the season, if he plays.
That's why, like Pat said, I think he's a sound best ball pick in both, even on half and in full PPR.
Yeah.
It's just from a managed stance. Even the weeks where you're like, this could be a Harvey week, especially when
it might not be.
Especially though, because your roster, like you're bringing up the front of the schedule, but like your roster's at full capacity. Like, so who are you benching him for? It's, I think, going to be that like barrier you're going to have to talk yourself into, and there probably won't be a lot of weeks where like you're super bullish on getting that right.
Yeah. And by the way, on the Rodriguez stuff, like he's kind of a good pick too now. He keeps falling. Like you don't have to. You got if you're doing more than one team, right? You don't have Tuten on it. You can live in the world where Chris Rodriguez is actually the guy that earns trust with the new coaching staff, and not entirely new because they were, he was Liam Cohen at college. Yeah. So, he has fallen pretty far with this foot injury thing. And I don't think the foot injury is a concern. So I imagine if you're doing like more home league stuff, you're probably not drafting by that time. Maybe people have completely forgotten about the foot injury and his price has gone back up. But if he's available kind of near where he is now in like the 11, 12, sometimes 13th round, I think he's a perfectly fine bet and a good bet the further he falls. Like I said, it's a little bit harder this year to find like a ton of upside that's not just like purely speculative day 3 rookies.
Yeah, that's what it all is, to be honest.
Yeah. Rodriguez was brought in and should have a role. Maybe he gets dusted, maybe he doesn't. And if he doesn't, I think he's going to pay off this ADP as like at least a spot starter that you can use in a pinch, and maybe you pair him with a Jeremiyah Love, and as part of that like way where you don't have to start Love every single week. Maybe Rodriguez is getting 15 carries a week, which he did a couple times last year. So Rodriguez, I think, it does not have to be like Tuten at the exclusion of thinking about Chris Rodriguez as a potentially good pick too. I mean, this is a backfield where you could have a clear winner, and I think both are priced where you could make the argument for either.
Yeah, for sure. And I like Coleman too. I just threw my rankings up on the screen. I've got Rodriguez 9 spots out of consensus among running back rankings, and I have Coleman above consensus as well. So I'm high on Tuten, high on Rodriguez. I'm not really that high on Harvey, but I could see it working out at some point in the season. I do like Coleman a lot. I think late in the season when they have those Raiders-Dolphins games, we could end up seeing a lot of him in those games. Rich, you brought up TreVeyon Henderson early off air as like one of the players you're the most afraid to fade. And I feel like really we've talked about just about every year two guy at this point, other than like Cam Scadaboo, but I think it's pretty easy conversation with Scadaboo. We kind of know what we have or might have, and everybody's drafting him accordingly. But nobody really knows what to do with Henderson, I don't think. I have him at running back 24. I'm ahead of David Montgomery, which feels asinine, honestly. Like, I mean, it does. Like, I feel like if you play out the season 100 times, like 75 or 80 of those, Montgomery outscores Henderson. But in the 20 or 25 where Henderson outscores him, yeah, holy crap.
That's the part, man. Because I think when you look at it on the surface, like, why would the Patriots not continue this compartmentalized backfield? Like, why would they not?
Yeah.
Like, Ramondre played really great in the playoffs. Down the stretch of the year, he was equally as good. He earned those snaps, and they trusted him in pass protection. Now, I will say this about Henderson: it was a calling card for him, in college. So, like, one of these things we forget about these rookies, and it's not just coming to the NFL. It's like there's no offseason for these guys, and especially a guy like TreVeyon Henderson who played at Ohio State and went deep into the college postseason. They go straight from the end of the college season into preparing for the combine, into OTAs, and like TreVeyon Henderson played a lot of football in a row. So, like, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt of, one, improving. Two, like, on the surface, like, I don't even think his season was, first of all, he apparently had, like, the worst, like, 1,100 yard, 10 touchdown rookie season that had ever happened in some people's minds. He had the most 50 yard touchdowns by a rookie in a season since Saquon. He had multiple games at 50 yard touchdown runs. The last running back to do that was Chris Johnson in 2009. Like, this is a guy, like, on a per touch basis. We saw also when he got to handle the backfield touches, like, the amount of upside he had. Like, this to me is a very adjacent situation to what we had with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery in Detroit. And we saw continued growth for the more explosive player at the expense of a very good player. David Montgomery was still really even good last year. And in the second season, Jahmyr Gibbs was being drafted as the RB6. We're drafting TreVeyon as the RB23. We still believe the Patriots are going to score a lot of points. They improve their offensive line. And then I think, too, when you look at just their, like, from a pure upside stance, Henderson had the highest yardage total for either of these backs in a game last season. He accounted for 7 of the top 11 top yardage totals between these two backs last year. So it's like, even while they were still sharing work, he was offering ceiling. He also had 2 30-point games. So it's just like, man, like, this is a guy, like, I don't always draft him because he does fall at a price point where it's like you need a thinner range of outcomes.
Yeah, I was about to ask, because are you drafting him, though?
Yeah, but he absolutely, I'm terrified when another gamer has him, though. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not always getting him, but he is a guy, when I don't click him and someone else has him, I'm like, fuck, man, there's a lot of scenarios this year where TreVeyon Henderson comes back and, like, he's a dude you needed. Because his ceiling compared to these other guys, even the guys that we already discussed at this point, I feel like his ceiling is just so much higher, and I get it. Oh, yeah. I swear. Oh, my bad.
What I think with, I mean, we're an hour and a half in. There's no way.
Jacob warned me ahead of the show, and he should have warned you too.
He did too. He warned me. That's my bad. Sorry, CBS.
What big CBS isn't watching 90 minutes in. What I've got on Henderson that I think is interesting is that people kind of think of him as, like, just this explosive play guy, just this change of pace guy, but, like, he was a bell cow in college before Judkins got there as a freaking freshman. As a freshman, he was a bell cow for Ohio State. And then I just did this episode where I dug into, like, potential bell cows. I came out establishing that there were, like, 9 true bell cows, for whatever that's worth. I looked at a lot of different things. But then I talked about basically every single backfield and who might be a bell cow. And if we had any semblance of, like, what that might look like. And he stood out, whereas, like, there were 2 injuries, right? Antonio Gibson and Ramondre. So I don't think it was necessarily the plan. But when he was bell cow, he was legitimately the guy. Almost an 80% snap rate in those games, 20 touches per game. And what I really like was the red zone work. He had 45% of the red zone touches and 55% of the touches from inside the 10. So I've got this crazy spreadsheet I made here where I filtered out any games where a running back missed time or whatever, like they had any sort of partial game. I took it out. And so it's just in these running backs healthy games, and it's their team market shares. And I've got on the right side the percentage of the red zone touches and percentage of the inside the 10 touches. Those rates for Henderson are really good. They're like Javonte Williams level good. And it's not the percentage of the backfield touches, it's the percentage of the entire offense. Like, where did it go? And to me, that it's a 4-game sample, so you don't want to overreact to it. But it's like, that's pretty cool, right? For a player that a lot of people act like they don't trust. It's like, this is a playoff team that was late in the season, and they did load him up, like they really did.
Yeah, and it certainly helps balance out the playoff run where they just didn't use him really at all. And, it's like one of those things where like you're playing like playoff DFS, he's projecting awful, and then he doesn't do anything. And then he projects off again, doesn't do anything.
Let's
so it's
remember which defenses they played, which pass rushes they played. And their line was sort of struggling, to be honest. And like they were playing really good pass rushes.
Two rookies on the left side, and obviously Jared Wilson's moving into a different spot this year.
TreVeyon Henderson last year allowed more pressures than Ramondre Stevenson has over the past 3 seasons. TreVeyon Henderson pass protected 36 times. Ramondre has pass protected over 200 times in that sample. Like, I think it's
Ramondre's still there, though. So you do have,
I know, but they're not going to play the Texans and the Broncos every single week. I just think it was pretty obvious, like at the end of the year, why it would be Ramondre in those games.
Yeah, it was obvious, but also like you couldn't find a way to get Henderson like more work. He's clearly like, an
on a team where
explosive
your
runner.
wide receiver 1 was playing 2/3 of the snaps.
Right. So it was, to me, that was worrying from a floor perspective where he goes, and it makes it, I would compare him to Tuten, where the upside is clearly there, but like you are having to pay a premium relative to, I view him a little bit differently than Gibbs, where there's some similarities, but Gibbs was an elite receiving prospect, like one of the high end receiving prospects with just really strong efficiency. Was kind of, when Gibbs came in, it's like, well, he's undersized. Can he actually be a lead runner? We know he can be a receiving back, but it's a lot to pay for, obviously that's not what happened. But with Henderson, he's a little bit undersized too, but doesn't have the same receiving profile that Gibbs does. And then you look at Ramondre, not just in pass protection, but as a receiver. Ramondre's been an underrated receiving back his entire career, and as a prospect, I think was kind of misunderstood as like a banger, which he kind of is as a runner, but he can catch the ball too. So that my thing with Henderson has been price. Like, why do I have to pay full price for upside? I'm not used to having to pay full price for upside. I normally get a little discount on the upside because the floor is lower
this year.
Yeah.
You look at wide receiver, there's so many guys we're not paying full price on for upside, and like he goes in the pocket where all those guys are kind of going.
Right. Now, to your point, Reeves, like, I am afraid of Henderson teams. I think we could be looking at a situation where Ramondre Stevenson is like the clear-cut regular season champion, and then TreVeyon Henderson wins someone a couple $1 million. Like that is like, it's
and that happened
he's
with
got
Gibbs
so much upside at the end of the year, especially.
2 years ago that happened with Gibbs, where it's like he went remember Montgomery, I think, missed the 2 fantasy playoff games, and it was like Gibbs went, I remember the 49ers, and he went like absolutely bananas, I remember. Yeah. And I think the week before he had an awesome game too. Maybe it was against the Vikings, if my memory serves me right. But like, I think Montgomery, he just went nuts those games. You just had to have him. Like, that was it.
Yep. So I could see that with Henderson. I'm just more annoyed with Henderson, and I was hoping that Henderson will actually fall as kind of like Ramondre through training camp. I think I'm hoping the narrative will be, I might even start saying it, Ramondre's the clear-cut starter here, from what we're seeing. Maybe as far as the preseason reps. Like, please, everyone pay full attention to the preseason. I need, Ramondre played 7 of 9 reps with Drake May. He's the clear starter. He's a workworse.
I got you.
Nathan Yanke.
I need it because I just need a little discount on Henderson. Like, have Henderson, it be, instead of me deciding between Henderson and Montgomery and Judkins and Tuten, have me decide between him and Price. Like, oh man, I'm going to draft a ton of TreVeyon Henderson if I can get him in that 6th round range. And I wonder if Ramondre and Henderson do come closer together, because I think from like the traditional sense of the word, Ramondre Stevenson is the starter in New England. And this is, for a guy who's not actually like a receiving specialist and more of an explosive runner, this is like kind of a lot to pay by historical standards. So I am paying it some, but I'm having trouble getting as much Henderson as I honestly would like to have.
Where you want him is where I have him. Running back 24 feels appropriate. I think he's running back 21 according to these consensus rankings. In a lot of drafts, he goes even higher. I think it's pretty close between. I have Ramondre running back 27. And I think if we pump enough propaganda out there, we might be able to
Let's do it. Let's
move
do
that
it.
a little bit. Clip this.
I'm gonna go to Patriots camp and just start tweeting out counts of with the ones. You know, Stevenson the last 14 snaps with the ones. And then I just want if I see Henderson, I'll just like turn away. Like I didn't see that right.
He's gonna be a guy I target for sure. He's gonna be a guy I target in auction leagues a lot. So a lot of these guys that are at these price points, because snake drafts get kind of dunked on, but the one thing that redrafts force you to do is it makes you take a binary stance on players, and I think that is actually a feature of it. But in auction leagues you can mitigate that damage control and some of that opportunity cost. So he'll probably be a guy I target more in auction leagues than paying the price where he currently is. But like I said, still scared when I don't get him.
Ramondre Stevenson last year, running back 10 in total explosive plays, ahead of Saquon Barkley. Running back 1 in explosive play rate, tied with Devon Achane.
And that's been the part of his game that's always been underrated. Like he like David Montgomery all those years. He's a good player. Like it's not a teardown of Ramondre Stevenson.
He's the starter in New England. I don't know why people are taking Henderson first. Is it working?
All righty. Anybody else, Rich, that you would have mentioned that you're afraid to fade?
Just from a positional stance, I mean, Josh Allen and Brock Bowers definitely fit that bill.
You might be fading Brock Bowers?
Just that cost. I mean, I think that there's definitely going to be a stretch. I've been the only person on this side of the fence that I've seen, but I definitely believe there's a stretch where Brock Bowers wrecks the field, but I still don't believe it's going to be 2026. And for a couple of reasons. One is I actually think the Clint Kubiak stuff has jumped the shark a little bit. And I was the Clint Kubiak guy when he went to the Saints, the guy leaving the Seahawks. But, Jacob, I've talked a lot about like the correlation between like routes run and tight ends and like how much that matters. I think the Raiders are going to play a lot slower than people think. Also, I brought the QB. I'm counting on Fernando Mendoza starting a string of games. We've never had a tight end 1 scorer overall attached to a rookie quarterback that played more than half the season. The highest we got was tight end 3, paying obviously a premium cost here for Brock Bowers. And the other thing is that I just believe the field of tight ends going to be inherently better to tight end 1 than it was last year, because Trey McBride set the all-time record for positional leverage at the tight end 1 versus tight end 2 production. And we're just not going to see that overlap, I think, 2 years in a row. So putting all those things together, like, again, terrified not to have him, because I believe from a player stance, like this dude's going to have like a Gronk-like run over his career. I'm just hoping I have one more year to where the setup looks a lot better to pay the premium for it.
I've got it up on the screen, Reeves. I don't know if you saw that I expanded on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I've been talking about because he led the league in routes as a rookie.
Mm-hmm. I do wonder if I think the stat you brought up about the rookie quarterback is potentially relevant, but if their schedule does just force them to have to pass more, I know that they're going to want to lean on the ground and play slow, I think, but I mean, if they're freaking starting out 2-11, like is their pass rate literally going to be like 27th or whatever? That seems crazy.
I'm going to play a ton of him in DFS. That's how I basically have just consoled myself through this process. It's like I'll play a lot of him in DFS.
I'm not fading Bowers. I'm targeting Bowers. I think the thing with Bowers, right, is like he is one of the best tight end prospects ever. We've seen in his rookie season that he is capable of fully translating that to the NFL. He's expensive enough where I can't just like take him in every draft. There's other second round picks that I like. So like I have him on 13% of my best ball teams, which, is less than, twice the expected rate, but comfortably above the expected rate. So he's a guy that I am targeting. You do got to pay up for it though. And really it would just be kind of the offense truly running through a tight end in a way that is not common in the NFL, but is also not really a stretch in this particular case. They don't have any receivers. Their top receiver is Trey Tucker. They signed Jalen Naylor, who really hasn't done a ton to this point in his career. They're saying, like, we don't need to talk to Stephon Diggs and Deebo Samuel because we've got Jack Besh. What? I think you should be knocking on some doors here, seeing if anyone wants to join the team. But yeah, it's like Deontay Thornton and Jack Besh are going to run significant routes for this team as things currently stand. I mean, it'd probably be in a decent amount of 12 with Michael Mayer out there, but Bowers is a lot better as a target earner than Michael Mayer too. So it's just a team that could really, really flow through the tight end. And, he gets targets more underneath. He's not like Colston Loveland or Dalton Kincaid, where it's like a little bit more of a.
I mean, dude, he ran the ball in college.
Yeah, he's a yak guy. It's to get the ball in his hands 5 yards downfield, and he'll do stuff with it. Maybe 10 yards downfield. The 15's cool too, but like he's not someone that like I just don't have as many worries even with the rookie quarterback stuff or Cousins being somewhat washed now. It's like you get the ball to this dude like in an Amon-Ra type of way.
I think with Cousins, it's going to be a plus.
Week 1 lives rent free in my head, man. I can't fade him. Like week 1, it felt like it was not going well. I remember being like too obsessively online and everything where I'm like, oh my gosh, we played 2 quarters of football. And for some reason, Brock Bowers is only playing half the snaps. What's going on? And then all of a sudden he had like 130
We had 100 yards.
Yeah, man.
Do you guys remember the Raiders just dog walking the Patriots to start off last year?
Yep. He's so good.
Week 1 is so weird, man.
I forgot about like the Patriots were never even in that game. Like it was.
I know. Geno looked awesome. It's like, oh, dude, Geno, what a great move by the Raiders.
And then next week they just got destroyed by the Chargers.
It was anybody else, Reeves, that you're afraid to fade? Anybody else?
Well, I said like
Josh Allen. Give me the Josh Allen take because I'm fading him too.
Yeah, I mean, to me, so one of the big takes, one of my bets this year is I believe the Bills are going to throw more this year. And I think it's a confluence of like a number of things. One is, Ken Dorsey was presumably fired for not throwing the ball too much. And that's why some of this influence that Joe Brady's had since he took over has been a little bit Sean McDermott driven. You obviously have defensive changes too. I think on paper, their defense is still going to be good. And I think Jim Leonard was a good hire, but there's just a lot of variance in terms of not having McDermott and some personnel rollover. And then when you just look at the Bills, schedule too, man, like we know when the Bills get pushed, like they lean on Josh Allen and like, dude, their schedule is just nothing but like haymakers, dude, especially for the fantasy stretch run. I mean, they play like the Lions, Chargers, Rams, Ravens. The Patriots are now good. So they play them twice. Chiefs, Texans, Packers, Bears, Broncos. Like, I feel like there's a lot of Josh Allen. Like, we're building the plane out of Josh Allen, especially for a guy like Joe Brady, who people are like under scrutiny of like, how did he even get elevated to this job? Like they're going to run this thing through Josh Allen, and especially like that weeks 12 through 17, like that money stretch of fantasy time. Cause again, I'm not going to have a lot of Josh Allen because he's QB1. Like I'm just not often taking the QB1 because one, we don't know when QB2 is coming off the board. And it's always the worst feeling, especially in like leagues I play in. And then just like, so I'm not going to inherently have him because like Bowers, you have a finite window. If you're not taking him here, you're not getting him.
Yeah,
here.
you're not getting him.
Yeah. Like, but like, man, like, if especially on teams like where Bowers and Allen particularly scare me on the teams where you get Bijan Gibbs, because you can theoretically just go Bijan Gibbs, Bowers, Allen, and just like, dude, like I've got the 3 best players at these positions. Like, come get me, especially for the money weeks. Like I've got 3 dudes that could put up theoretically 100 points. Like, come fly with me.
You keep making the bull case on these players.
That's why he's
that's what I said. It's but well, I mean, like the downside again is those 2 players in particularly. It's the opportunity cost of them being onesie positions. When you miss on tight end and you miss on quarterback with that kind of equity, and no one's missed on Allen in 6 years. But again, shit happens. Like, sorry, my bad, CBS.
I love that I'm not the one cursing.
But like, yeah, that's just it's structurally the way like I play the game of fantasy football. Like, and remind you, the Bowers take is non-FFPC. FFPC by all means, dude. Like, he's probably would be my 104 or 105.
Yeah, that's where he goes. Yeah, he goes right up there. He's going at the 105 right now, ahead of JSN. I mean, for me with Allen, I think the quarterback stuff has been kind of interesting this year. Like in best ball, you've seen kind of a compression of the quarter, like the Tyler Shoughs of the world get priced up for the first time in a long time because everyone, people are taking, I think, more 3 quarterback builds and all that. But even in best ball, you're seeing Lamar Jackson, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Joe Burrow, into Caleb Williams. Like those guys are actually cheaper than they've been. And that from, the main event ADP and stuff looks to be carrying over. In fact, if anything, you can get Jaden Daniels like in the 9th round. Sometimes his ADP's in the 8th. We got him in the 9th in a main event that we did last week. Jalen Hurts is in the 9th, in the late 9th. We got him in the 10th of our first main event. Like Jalen Hurts in the 10th round, I think I can keep up with you if you have 3rd round Josh Allen. You might beat me, and in the championship, your quarterback outscores mine and maybe by 10 points. But like I also scored pretty well. And I have a 3rd round pick versus your 10th. You might not even be starting your 10th round pick in the matchup. I'm probably starting my 3rd if I made the championship. So just like the opportunity cost of Allen with real values at quarterback, like dual threat quarterback, guys who run for a bunch of touchdowns, like not like predictable high floor with ceiling plays like Jalen Hurts and Jaden Daniels. Like, I mean, 9th round Daniels is nuts. And I have a share of it. 8th round ADP is too low for him. I think with Allen, for me, it just comes down to that pricing dynamic. Who is?
Even Drake May is too low.
Yeah, Drake May's. Yeah, I mean, I've pounded the table for Drake May all last year.
Imagine having a year 2 quarterback have this that can run. I mean, he's the closest thing. If the Patriots, they haven't swerved into this yet, and I doubt that they're going to do it this year. But if they were to swerve into Josh Allen running near the goal line, like the way, or swerve into Drake May rushing, like because imagine the quarterback having Drake May's 2nd season that comes with his rushing ability, and like he's still kind of a discount.
And he got AJ Brown.
And got AJ Brown.
The thing with May is that when he does all the Allen stuff, but it makes me a lot more nervous to watch it because he doesn't, it's like, oh yeah, being like 20 pounds lighter is actually a little concerning.
But he's at this point of his career and definitely coming to the NFL though, he was a better passer than Allen. And that's the part where you're just like, dude, like there's so much like more we could have.
He was outscoring Allen at the end of last year. Like, I started Drake May over Josh Allen in a dynasty league and won a championship I would not have won if I hadn't done that. Like I had the decision, I made the right decision, and it was Drake May. And he goes 3+ rounds later. Like, why? Why? I don't get it. He just added AJ Brown. Like, it doesn't make any sense. You had DJ Moore, I had AJ Brown. My guy goes 3 rounds later.
Well, it's everything we've talked about. It's the last sticking image, and fantasy football gamers, I believe, are more guilty of this than the other sports. Is the last thing we saw being factored in so much to these. We let it off with CJ Stroud, right? Like we talked about the Jaguars. We talked like the last time we saw the Patriots. The narrative was they played real teams. The offense isn't as good. Drake May isn't as good, and that's how people are leading off going into this offseason.
So we spent a lot of time today talking about the Texans.
There's a lot more fake teams than real teams.
Those teams. I'm curious what y'all are thinking about the LA Chargers, because that's a team that people are very, very excited for. Are you two really expensive ways to get exposure to this massive upside are Hampton and McConkey? Are either of you considering fading either of those two?
Hampton, I'm probably going to have like a minor fade on. I like other backs in that range a little bit better. I think I like Kenneth Walker more ultimately. The Keaton Mitchell thing isn't ideal as far as, I think he probably does siphon off some work to begin the year. I'm not really a Keaton Mitchell believer in I think he's just a little overpriced for what he is, but I could see it hurting Hampton for a while at least. And then Walker, goes to he's been a better pass catcher than I thought he would be. And he's improved as he's gone. And now he goes to an offense that's going to pass the ball so much more and really lean on him, I think, to be an explosive element where they still don't really have that in the passing game unless Xavier Worthy takes a big step. So, I don't think that Hampton's ultimately going to be a priority target for me. And he goes so high that just having that stance might make him a fade ultimately. I kind of like the idea of him though. Like I just wish he was a little cheaper.
He comes up to me.
Would you say you're scared of not having?
Right. That's why he comes up to me.
I would say I'm scared of not having him. Yeah.
It could be so big. I feel like
even if the Chargers didn't hire Mike McDaniel, this is a team that already showed their upside, obviously with the splits that happened when the offensive line is healthy. But you look at everything last year, they faced third down on 55% of their set of downs. Only the Titans were worse. They averaged 4.9 yards per play on early downs. That was 28th. They averaged 4.5 yards per play on first downs. Only Cleveland was worse. And then McDaniel's just been so hyper efficient, all the Shanahan tree guys, early down success rate stuff. The Chargers also were 29th in red zone touchdown rate. We know that's going to oscillate back. And then you factor in even if they didn't have the McDaniel hire, there was all these pros, and then you add the McDaniel stuff, you layer it on top. That's interesting. I thought I was going to open low on Hampton, and then when I did the tiers and like wrote up the players, I actually came out more bullish on Hampton than Jeanty.
Oh wow!
The under the hood stuff I thought was more favorable, and I thought all the pros were lateral. Like all the pros we're making for Jeanty are equal pros for Hampton, and I think you would argue they maybe even are better than Jeanty's because he's still with the Raiders, right? Like he got the coordinator change. McDaniel's maybe arguably better for running backs than even Kubiak is. Offensive line upgrades, obviously the Raiders get Colton Miller back, Jackson Powers-Johnson back, and you add Linderbaum. Well, now you get Tyler Biadasz, you get Joe Alt back, you get Rashawn Slater back.
Yeah.
And then, like the Chargers just project to score more points. Like they already project to score more points. So it's just like, man, like if all these are pros, they're lateral pros. And then when I went under the hood, and Hampton was a better player than Jeanty in year one in equally bad team environments. So you look at, he was 30.
I don't know if I'd say equally bad.
Well,
having Herbert makes things better.
That's fair, but I mean, in terms of like offensive linemen, so both were like adjacent, like they were hit at like exorbitantly high rate behind the line of scrimmage. Hampton was hit behind the line of scrimmage 58% of his runs. He was 38th in yards before contact out of the 49 running backs. But if you look at all of his stuff, when he wasn't hit behind the line, he was explosive. 7.4 yards per rush. It was 7th out of 49 backs, higher than Jeanty. He had explosive run on 19% of those runs. That was 9th. Even on the runs where he was hit at or behind the line of scrimmage, he was 8th in yards per carry. He was 3rd in explosive run rate. He rushed for more yards than expected on 45% of his runs, which was 7th in the league. And that was behind an offensive line that had their starters play 16.5% of the offensive snaps last year, the lowest rate in the NFL.
It's a mess.
So like, and you look at some of the outside zone stuff. He was actually, him versus Keaton Mitchell, he was a better outside zone runner than Keaton Mitchell too, which is like the big scheme fit. And that's what we're getting with Miami as well. So like, and then this is a guy that I think both guys are like tertiary ancillary catching back. Like they can catch passes, but they don't really add a lot of surplus value for if you're throwing to these running backs. Jeanty had a lot of 61% of his targets were at or behind the line of scrimmage. They both remind me like the Leonard Fournette correlate. Like they caught passes in these offenses, but like they didn't really add anything to catching the passes. So I think both guys have fragility as pass catchers as well. So I just look at kind of splitting the hairs of like almost if these guys have equal footing, it's like, well, this guy's on the better team in the better offensive environment. And I actually know Mike McDaniel is going to provide surplus value. So I ended up moving.
Jeanty was an elite prospect though, like truly one of the all-time production profiles in college.
Absolutely.
And Hampton was a good prospect, but not, I don't think on that level. I think heading into year 2, that still matters quite a bit. So that's where I'd be Jeanty there, but
I've thought about this a ton and basically kind of had the exact mindset that you just had, Reeves. And where I landed, why I ended up with Jeanty still just barely ahead of him is this right here, where his usage stuff last year was so insane. And maybe it's out of necessity, sure, but 45% of the touches, the only players that were higher were Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor. 52% of the red zone touches, 50% of the inside the 10 touches. And to me,
he's such a workhorse, man.
Exactly.
Like, he's such a throwback. Like, just you can give the football to this dude a ton.
If the offense is just
is a receiver, as a runner, whatever you want.
If the offense is just fine, if Clint Kubiak and the offensive line upgrades make it like the 20th best offense, I think he's really, really good. And if they're like any better than that, then there's upside. If he gives you explosive plays, which just weren't there at all last year, but we know that he can do, then there's upside.
Yeah, I mean, and then we talked about like the schedule. I mean, they have our 30th ranked rushing schedule. They're favored in 3 games on the season. And then you look at even before their bye. I mean, it's just like it's such a rogues gallery of like really strong opponents that I broke that tie. It's not even that I'm down on Jeanty. It's just versus the market. Like I literally just have Hampton 1 spot ahead of him.
Yeah, and that's for me with Hampton, it's that same kind of thing of like I like Hampton when I'm on the clock and these I'm only gonna have a handful of the kind of the higher stakes leagues or like the leagues I really care about for redraft. Like, what am I actually going to do? And I'm kind of leaning the other way on Hampton right now. For me with Jeanty, part of it does come down to the talent discrepancy between the other guys on the roster. Like, I don't think Mike Washington is a good running back. And the fact that his insane athleticism, the 10-yard split and the 40 time at his size, that doesn't get him drafted as anything more than Jeanty's backup. That was pretty telling. Dylan Laube, Chris Collier, the other guys on the depth chart right now. Like you do have with Hampton, they bring in Keaton Mitchell, which I'd like to hear where you guys are at on him. Cause I've been I just think he's overpriced. But at the same time, I don't think they're not going to have any kind of role for him. And then, Vidal, they kind of trusted a little bit in pass protection and stuff last year. So I worry a little bit more with Hampton of having total control of the backfield, where I think Jeanty, that's almost like just my baseline assumption is that he's just going to dominate touches here. And the offense takes a bit of a step forward, maybe not a huge step, but to your point, Jacob, like a little bit of a step forward could be all that it takes. We saw Bijan really bust as a rookie. Like we've had to start to pay up for these elite rookie prospect profiles, and it hasn't actually worked as rookies. But then year 2, we have seen some big time hits as the profile finally shines through.
Yeah, and I don't even take Hampton a lot because where he's going, like you said, at that turn, like, you're a little more, maybe bullish on either wide receiver there, or if you like one of the other running backs at that spot too. But like I said, he definitely fits that mold where like his upside outcome is, I think, just as good. Like,
yeah, I hear you there for sure.
Yeah. Mitchell, I think I'm fine with in best ball because I think he's going to have enough like ancillary targets per week, and he has the explosives to like maybe crack your lineup more times than like a typical running back would go at that ADP. But from like a managed league, like when are you going to be bullish on?
I was going to say he's discount RJ Harvey.
Like when are you going to be bullish on?
Yeah, that's a good one. He is back to back the literal exact same ADP in the main event as Chris Rodriguez now. And that's like one where like if Chris Rodriguez pays off in the 11th pretty quick, I think. And Keaton Mitchell, it's like roster clogger city.
I thought it was interesting though. I alluded to it with Hampton though, but he was in, this was in Baltimore, and obviously it's not the Mike McDaniel offense, but like Mitchell, small sample size, obviously because he doesn't play out. Like his outside zone stuff is actually really weak. He's 37th out of 55 running backs since he entered the league, and outside zone yards per carry. Makes up 31% of his runs, which has actually been his highest run archetype. It's the inside stuff where he gets to second levels where all of his explosives have come from. That's what I thought was pretty interesting about when I looked at the marriage of these two guys, him joining this team.
There's been a lot of Achane Mostert comps with him, and what you're saying, I think, is that he's the Mostert.
He could be very much because people forget too that
he's just tiny Mostert.
But Mostert was like a hyper explosive back. Like, he wasn't like a grinder.
Right. Like, no, he was super fast. He was a special teamer. Yes. That's why he's stuck in the league as a kick returner. Yeah.
That's how he hung.
And they used him as a running back. We're like, oh, this works actually.
Yeah, cut his teeth. And my thing with Vidal is like, say Hampton were to get hurt, or if Hampton got hurt, that's where I think like maybe Mitchell's role doesn't really change.
No, for sure.
That's how I feel. Yeah.
I wanted to
it'll change some.
Look at this.
It'll change some, yes. But Vidal would then, I think, get more work because Mitchell's a 190-pound guy. He's 5'8", 190 pounds.
I think he came in at 179. That's what he weighed in at the combine.
They're giving him some year weight, like all of us put on weight as we get older.
Last year, Kamani Vidal had as many games with 20 or more touches as Kyron Williams, Tony Pollard, and Travis Etienne.
Who also was a good prospect, Vidal, by the way.
Remember, I liked him.
Yeah. We can't look. My whole thing is I'm throwing all of the back half efficiency stuff for the Chargers out. So like I don't even care like his yards per touch or whatever. Like what the Chargers were doing offensively wasn't real offense. The final like 9 games.
He had 4 games with 20 more touches. He averaged 19 PPR points per game in those games. He also, I dug into like pass protection. He was used as a pass protector a ton last year. Like they clearly trust him. I think that would be his role. I think he would be the lead back, to be honest, and Mitchell would basically play the same role.
Yeah, which makes me, I think that makes him a pretty bad redraft pick. But maybe he's in the range where you're not even really taking him in these drafts because he's in the same range as kind of a Casey Concepcion, who I wanted to just quickly say, if no one's drafting him in your league, it should be you who drafts Casey Concepcion. That guy has some serious upside. As we kind of were talking about some of the rookie wide receivers earlier, like he actually I think could be a hit as a guy who can deliver after the catch and earn targets and potentially be the number one on a team. Like when you think through moving from a best ball profile, sometimes he hits my lineup, but I don't know when, to like, no, he just straight up projects awesome and I'm clearly going to play him. Concepcion really jumps out in that later range where a guy like Mitchell, it's like, when are you ever going to know?
Yeah. No, it seems like a managed league nightmare, man.
It's
Yeah.
time. 2 hours in, it's time to get to the New Orleans Saints and Jordyn Tyson discussion. So I want to just start off with this and then let y'all take it any direction you want. This is a crazy stat. I think you'll dig this, Reeves. You might already know this, but it just seems like it's up your alley. The Saints last year spent more time playing from behind than any offense over the past 5 years in any season, which just seems insane to me. And it really wasn't that much different with Tyler Shough in there. I think their defense can be a lot better. I'm curious what you think about this offense if we're just going to see a ton of passing again. I don't know. Crazy stat.
I mean, I think the defense will be better, but I don't think it's still particularly good. So there's a lot of margin here where I don't think it's going to be like this team's going to turn into the Texans, right? Like that we talked about. This was another team I thought was interesting when I went to the hood because I came out in general, the way I play fantasy football is like these guys that were like really extreme values last year, and some I was in on, some I wasn't in on, that end up becoming like extremely high priced. Like I tend to not want to pay up for those guys the following year. And inversely, like the guys that maybe failed, I like to buy those guys when like the room thinks like they're just like failures, right? And try to buy them. JSN was this guy last year, right? Like people are like, I did 2 years at JSN. Like I'm not going back for a third.
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah.
And then, kind of like, like Roma Dunze is kind of that guy this year where like people are like, no,
Are you in?
I mean, why not at that spot? Like,
Right,
yeah.
I'm
But there's a couple of these
more
guys
in
up
the
top that I was, into last year that even when I went to the hood, I like became less bullish on. And Chris Olave is one of those guys. And I think he's an extremely talented player. I think he's one of the better receivers in the NFL. But you kind of hit upon like some of the stuff, like some of the game script stuff really swung into his favor. And then I think his target competition really was kind of non-existent. But anytime he had Rashid Shaheed or Devon Vele of all people on the field, he was kind of just okay for fantasy. And like now we're taking him at like wide receiver 12, like wide receiver 11. And that's kind of, I think, tough for me. He ended the season with 3 wide receiver 1 scoring weeks after Vele's injury. He had 2 before that, the whole season. And Vele was out. We saw Vele even out target him for a stretch the month before Vele's injury. And we saw, 2 stretches of the year where we saw Vele have over a 20% target share, and then Shaheed had a just under 22% target share while he was with the team. And it's like Tyson's going to have a 20% target share on this team.
Right.
So it's just like, man, like I look at Olave and like paying where I was really in on him from a bet on talent perspective at cost last year. This year, it's kind of like, wow, we're really paying the iron price for a guy that still maybe has, I like Tyler Shough, enough at his cost, but like, what if Tyler Shough fails? Like, it's definitely not outside of the realm of
dude. It's crazy how far it's like almost like you're not even allowed to talk about that as a possibility anymore. No. We're 18 months ago, people are like, who is Tyler Shough and why are you trying to talk to me about him? Like, there wasn't even like on people's radar. Like at the Senior Bowl, before the 2025 draft, everyone wanted to know about like Jalen Milroe. No one cared at all. Almost cursed didn't about Tyler Shough, and it's like now he's a guarantee to work out. He was reasonably efficient last year with a lot of his volume. They didn't have a running back last year. They signed one in free agency. This team could be different this year. They could be playing more with the lead. They could be trying to run the ball more because they actually have someone they trust now in ETN. And then Shough might not be that good. He wasn't great last year. His efficiency was okay. From a rookie perspective, it wasn't like it was bad. To me, it's like, here's a guy who might be able to take a step forward in year 2. But if he doesn't, I think people are going to feel like they overdrafted the Saints, especially Olave. He's actually been a pretty clear fade for me, even though I agree with you that he is a good player.
Yeah, I mean, and especially when you look at that pocket of receivers, I mean, outside of maybe Garrett Wilson and Tetairoa McMillan, like he clearly has the worst quarterback play and offensive attachment, even expecting them to, have more positive regression to the mean. I mean, just go up and down that list of guys. I mean, T. Higgins obviously has Joe Burrow, Egbuka has Baker, McConkey has Herbert, Flowers has Lamar, DJ Moore even has, Josh Allen, Terry McLaurin, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Waddle, Bo Nix. Like, it's even you get the guys like Christian Watson, right? And those guys have better offensive attachment still too. So I look at it just like this, and it's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to take my profit from last year, and I'm just going to make him beat me this year again.
The Shough stuff's really interesting. Dan and I did 34 minutes on Shough. We watched a ton of film, and what we came out with Shough is like He played well last year. He played well when he was on time. He has the arm to make these outbreaking throws that are just like pretty ridiculous and put it right on Olave. And so I think that chemistry there is good. But also like it's a lot of the stuff people were worried about coming over from college with pressure was clearly there, where he's like often fading and just like taking negative plays and stuff. And I think their offensive line is built to be a good pass protecting unit. Could be that. But
they just got to stay healthy. They're one of these teams that just been so snake bit with injuries up front for like 3 years in a row.
If he struggles with pressure, man, like I think it could be a situation where we see teams kind of get a better beat on him after getting all this film, and find ways to heat him up, and it could get kind of bad because he makes some kind of egregious decisions at times. The other thing with him is he had a really, really low touchdown rate last year, and so maybe that points towards him getting better luck on that and having a better year. But it also is like, look at the guys who have had low touchdown rates early in the career. Most of them freaking suck. Like it's very possible, I think, that we're looking at a very small sample size here where he played against really bad competition and still he was playing from behind all the time. And so there's all these games where they have no run game and they're just dropping back 40 or 50 times. And it's like, I don't know. It on paper seems like a clear red flag type of candidate to be a fluke. I like the film.
All of this stuff too. I don't know if you looked at it, I'm sure you did, Jacob, with the stuff you do, but like if you remove like all the hand holding like components, and we love coaches, again, we don't want to we want to have easy buttons in our offenses. We just talked about CJ Stroud, but like on the non-hand holding plays, like Shough was a disaster. Like the non-motion stuff, like it was rough, man.
For sure. I will say on the motion though, we wanted to talk about Tyson here. I do think that sets up really well for him. Tyson's such an interesting player. When I dug into Tyson's profile, like pre-draft, I was terrified that the Chiefs are going to take him. That's who I root for. It sucks, but that I'm from Kansas City.
That sucked for you.
It was great for a while. They drive me insane. The players, I don't want to get into it, but there are a lot.
Oh, you poor guy. Yeah.
Sorry.
How do you manage?
All right. I grew up with the Chiefs. Okay, I'm not 20 years old. Like they were abysmal for most of my life. They had all sorts of off-field stuff that was really awful. And it's kind of carried over the whole time.
I'm on a show with dudes that roots for Patrick Mahomes and another guy who got to watch Tom Brady play 20 years into Drake May. Like, get out of here, both of you.
Hey, I rooted against Tom Brady. Let me be clear about that. I never rooted for Tom Brady, and I won't. I rooted for him one specific week back in 2022. But other than that, I've never rooted for him.
Anyway. The Chiefs did not draft Jordan Tyson. I was glad that they avoided him because I think there's a lot of red flags to his profile that are scary. So this stat I think is really interesting where you could take it either way, but it's receiving yardage market shares and all the stats here, touchdowns, receptions, and everything. The percentage of the teams receiving stats accounted for well on the field among these round one prospects. I think these top 15 picks. Yeah. It's Tyson way above anyone. So you've got like all the guys coming in the same range. From Olave, London, Tetairoa McMillan, up to Jalen Waddle, Malik Neighbors, Jamar Chase, it's 32% to 37% of the team's receiving yards. And then you have Tyson at 47%. 40% of the receptions. No one else is above 33. 65% of the receiving touchdowns. No one else is above 48. And so to me, it's like that feels like clear fake offense happening here. Like, and I don't know if that's realistic at all.
Yeah, the other thing I'd say it's not like some of the other guys you're listening there, like, Malik Neighbors at LSU and Jalen Waddle from Alabama, like he's not on one of those types of offenses. And this was, his best year was, I believe, the Scattaboo year from 2024, where the offense is really built around Scattaboo, as a whole. And so it's like the passing game is not the feature of this college offense. It's built around the run game. And that makes me nervous too, where it's like I've got the smaller, less prestigious program, and then like when you look at his stuff like per play, which I think is an interesting way to look at these receivers, is like, is the offense built around them or just the passing game? And for him, it was more the passing game, not the offense. Also, I think he's really high upside because he completely dominated his college passing game. Like I think he's a bit more boom bust than than some others do, but I think that Tyson has the potential to be like a really strong target earner because he earned a ton of targets per drop back, when he was in college over multiple seasons. Like he's not a one-year wonder by any means. Some like several really, really strong analytical seasons. And so, yeah, I think, in the 6th round, like he clearly checks the boxes that you need for upside and could rival Chris Olave. Like you just say, like, you paid a 3rd for Chris Olave. I paid a 6th for Jordyn Tyson. And I like my guy better by the end of the year.
When they drafted him, Dan and I was like, Dan, this is literally the perfect spot. I think he could outscore Olave. I literally think he could outscore Olave. And
he could.
When I watched Tyson, I was like, he reminds me of CeeDee Lamb in the way that he moves. He's not as powerful as Lamb, but in the way that he moves laterally, the explosiveness literally reminds me of CeeDee Lamb. And then he goes to play with Kellen Moore, who got to unlock CeeDee Lamb and does all this pre-snap motion stuff with his slot receiver. The other thing I would say regarding like Olave that we've been a little bit worried about, I think there's a chance that he's just so good that it doesn't matter too much. Like Olave will just keep getting better.
Yeah. I think he's going to be overall fine. I just think we're taking him at a spot where like fine isn't what you're looking for.
You're not looking for fine in the 3rd round.
I need to reframe this. I think he might be like one of the best receivers in the league this year, might be like as good as Jackson Smith and Jigba. So I did this episode where I looked at who beats man press and zone coverage. And it's like who can unlock a 25-30% type of target share. It's using reception perception data. It's using fantasy point status charting as well. And Olave really impressed me when I looked at these numbers. And then I asked Matt Harmon about it. I was like, do you think that because I've got a lot of reasons to worry about him that the target share could come down. Do you think that he can be, though, so good that he just continues to get better and continue to get these type of targets that we've kind of always seen him do?
We really just need Shough to be that good, not Chris Olave.
I was like, do you think he's like can be as good as Jackson Smith and Jigba, where you can build the offense around him? And he said, I think he kind of already is as good as Jay said at route running. I was like, that's crazy, man. Yeah, I guess. I don't think many people would think that. The other thing I want to say on Olave,
that's why he was such a strong bet last year. I mean, this is clearly a talented player. Just everyone is so.
But he was in the 6th last year.
Yeah,
that's the difference. So,
and like I said, even in this environment, where even if you're like we're a little bit bullish on them getting better just from a top down stance, like his splits when he just wasn't the only guy to throw the ball to, it was kind of a little bit actually under where he's actually even currently being drafted.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where I look.
By the way, Vele's still there. They talk up Vele as like a guy they like on the outside, which is probably not going to last because I think Tyson takes over in 12 eventually. But
the other kid from North Dakota State, Trey Lance.
Bryce Lance.
Yeah, Bryce Lance. Yeah. But I think, they have more weapons than they did at the end of last year, clearly. Yeah.
They have a running back.
They have a running back. They've got a very high upside receiver bet who they took top 10. Like this is, I don't know. There's certain guys there like Zay Flowers goes right around there where you're like the whole offense could flow through Zay Flowers and almost how does it not? DeVonta Smith we talked about. Yeah, he plays with Lamar Jackson, but the passing offense will flow through him.
Yeah.
DeVonta Smith we talked about is that having that upside with Lemon, I'm a little more skeptical, but I mean Tyson he went a lot earlier, and I think ultimately Lemon is somewhat of a comparable prospect, but you bet on Tyson over Lemon. So it's just hard for me to see how Olave like dominates the offense this year, which is you're looking for that kind of upside in the 3rd.
The last thing I wanted to add is the schedule of cornerback ones is really, really difficult for New Orleans. They face a lot of the best corners, and they move guys around enough that it might not matter that much, but I think that's probably Olave.
Yeah, I think both these guys, because Tyson is out of the top receivers in his actual profile, played all 3 receiver positions. Like we're projecting Carnell, Tate, and Lemon to be able to do more than they were asked to do in college because they're that good of players. But Tyson did it. Like he played all 3 positions. And I think Kellen Moore also, that was a plus for him in his system. That's why he even maybe wanted him more than a Lemon, is that he just saw like I can interchange Olave and Tyson more than I believe I can change Lemon, and that's why he wanted him more. And that's why I believe that he was such a strong fit.
Are y'all good to wrap up with some actual like rankings and takes on these receivers that we've kind of circled around, and then we can call it there? All right.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk McMillan real quick?
All freaking out
because
let's do that as we get up to his range.
Okay, sounds good.
Where I've got these 2 rookies.
Which guy?
Tetairoa McMillan.
Oh, McMillan.
I've got Tyson and Tate at wide receiver 31, 32. I want to be aggressive on them, but I'm having a hard time getting there with Tate, especially ahead of some of these players. I think Parker Washington, I don't mean to be super, super high on him, but I do think it sets up so nice for him at the beginning of the year. And I just think he has a massive upside proposition. So these are for managed leagues. But this range up here really is the one that's interesting, and it starts with McMillan, and I think Christian Watson is going to move up into this range too. I've got McMillan at wide receiver 23, which is a lot lower than consensus. And I think if I had to guess, that's a lot lower than where you have him, Kerrane. Reeves, do you have any thoughts on McMillan first?
Yeah, I mean, I think McMillan, the teardown for McMillan is interesting because it's a lot like Devon Achane. Like it really has nothing to do with the player, right? Like the reason you don't want, like, or he hasn't gotten steamed up, or well, partially it's two things. One is obviously the attachment to Bryce Young. And then two was, obviously the year one deployment, just having such an overlap to Marvin Harrison Jr. that I think people have like that just like stigma of like not going back to the well, because Marv's ADP really didn't like move in year two. Everyone was just kind of like, all right, we'll do this again. That's what happened. You look at Marv, like 2 years in now, his career has played 80% of his snaps out wide, 1.6% of his targets at or behind the line of scrimmage. As a rookie, McMillan 85%, the same 1.6% target share. Like no bunnies, no free squares for him. And the bull case would be like, hey, they're going to open this up, play a little bit more empty with Bryce Young. Brazel's going to come in and just be the Jalen Hyatt, like, dude, just go run fast. Just go run fast, and this allows McMillan to now move around. That's the bull case for him. The teardown would just be like, hey, they're already down. They're 2 starting offensive tackles to start the year, and we're not even in really with training camp just opening. And just obviously, can Bryce Young acquiesce that change? But as a player, this guy is, I think, excellent. I actually think he's better suited to be after the catch in his college profile than Marv was. I think Marv took more.
Yeah, he's more of a yak guy than Marv.
Then Marv took more of a clean projection than McMillan did. And so if he does get access to that, I think it's really good. It's just, again, the pocket of guys. So I'll let just Pat go and run with the bull case.
Yeah, I mean, I think with McMillan, I'm not even really like projecting or expecting that he does get a lot out of the slot or whatever. Like there was I think a note that maybe he could play more in the slot this year. I'd take it, but I think what I'm really betting on is that Canales has got a history now of really feeding targets to the X receiver. It's like the clear, his year was the Mike Evans year in the Bucs offense. We saw Deontay Johnson getting peppered before that fell apart, but like he seems to want to really feed his X as the number one, and that is what McMillan is. And he's, he played out wide 80% last year. He was efficient. He had 21% targets per route run, 1.85 yards per route run. And it's, to me, I'm like, okay, this guy was asked to be like a big boy wide receiver one. No fake stuff, no design stuff. Just go out there, be an NFL wide receiver one, old school. Like, you could do this in 2007, right? Like, yeah, great. I did it. Now it's year two. We talk all the time about these guys taking steps forward from year one to year two. Luther Burden is, you might be in a draft and Luther Burden goes first. And it's like, okay,
he will.
Yeah,
You will be in a draft for Luther Burden.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah. So the guy who couldn't pass Olamide Zaccheaus for like the whole year, and then flashes at the end, and it's really cool per route. That's great. I'm excited about him too. But what about the guy who just from like day one was the team's number one option and profiles exactly like that again, and was a much stronger prospect in the first place, went, 8th overall compared to falling to the second, for Luther Burden. Like this is we have a very high confidence. This is a very talented player. And those are the types of guys who more often than not, if we're looking for the league winners, like that's where they come from. They come from the guys who are already really good. And then they get awesome. They get incredible. And we might not see that this year with Tetairoa McMillan, even if he is that level of player. Maybe we see it in year 3 or year 4, but it certainly could happen in year 2 after a pretty strong rookie season from, what he did. And yeah, maybe there's a little more easy button stuff. Maybe they open it up more with Bryce Young. Maybe there's some injuries, maybe they're just in shootouts all the time. So the defense is really bad. Like there's kind of a few ways for this to go where they're like, because McMillan is so clearly our best player at this point, let's have like our best path to victory is having our team run through this guy. And, as a 4th round price, there's some real upside for that. Like we talked about Olave and some of these other guys, like can the whole offense run through them? Like I know the whole offense can run through Tetairoa McMillan if they design it that way. And if they're just willing to let Bryce Young pass a little bit more, I think it'd be a lot more fun if they actually had some 4 wide stuff and let him run around and create. And, the other thing about McMillan is he's not just
to find out, right? Like this is
you do need to find out.
You're
need
on
to
the fence. This is it for Bryce Young. You have to either extend him or kick the can. Like, why would you not use this as a window to like, hey, we just have to throw you into the fire, man?
The honest answer is that finding out might get you fired. But it would be nice if they do open things up. And in that type of offense, McMillan's yak ability could shine a little bit more. So there's to me, he's just kind of classic small miss, big hit type of player where like maybe the small miss happens more frequently than is ideal for the price. But like, it's such a clean bet when you kind of zoom out and you're like, this guy was an awesome prospect, honestly, an underrated prospect. Because there's a bunch of bull about him falling, to the late first and all this stuff. Like that was all just smoke. So the team that wanted him, probably Cowboys, could try to get him or whatever. And he goes 8th. Like that was nonsense. So great prospect, strong rookie season. Like I said, efficient in a real NFL role. These are the type of players that take big steps in year 2. And if we get that, I think he could crush.
I really like all that. I think it's so impressive that he did what he did in that role. I am one of the probably idiots who has Luther Burden ranked ahead of him just because I think the upside for Luther Burden in Ben Johnson's offense is just, below the door.
Luther Burden was my highest drafted player in best ball last year.
We don't need to. Yeah,
can't quite do it this year. Yeah.
But we know how nuts it could get.
Yeah, you guys are the reason I can't have Luther Burden on my
team. Not me.
It is me, and it's not sort by yards per out run. It's watch this guy freaking play. Watch Ben Johnson offense.
No. We talked about Burden like being one of those guys like I don't always get, but like I actually want to get him. I want to have him. I just never get him because someone else always wants him more.
Right.
This is how you have to rank Luther Burden if you want to get Luther Burden. I've got him at wide receiver 18.
And my problem with Burden in that range of wide receivers is like there's like a almost probable outcome where like that dude has 4 to 6 touchdowns.
Yeah, no, I've heard you say this. I think it makes sense. Where
he had 2 end zone targets as a rookie, and I think it'll go up obviously with DJ Moore being gone. But like it's still like Loveland and Adunze are like actual threats in that area of the field versus him, and like I have to take him against guys that like are gonna dominate their team's like touchdown equity. Like McMillan's gonna have a 40% red zone target share.
Yeah.
I also think he's a legitimate running back with the ball in his hands, and he could score on any given play.
He's awesome.
And Ben Johnson could want to get him end arounds and stuff like that in the red zone. Like I think
it's funny because I see Burden like being like the kind of guy like having this like we're gonna like 3 years from now having the same conversation where people have with Flowers, where like there's a debate of like how good he is because like this guy's overrated. He has he's super efficient, has like that, but like just doesn't have the touchdown equity.
Yeah. So I have Tetairoa McMillan wide receiver 23, which is as low as I can reasonably put him. I've done this with a few players. It's him, it's Judkins, it's Jeremiyah Love. It's teams that I hate the role, but I want to just start low. And then
another team too that also has a
I'm working my way up. Yes. I'm working my way up though. I think he's going to end up being higher than this. I really like the case Pat makes.
Which could be good for us.
I threw some historic context up on the screen. For any audio listeners, it's just really, really crazy stuff. I want to start with the yak. I think that I've been really focused on middle of the field stuff this offseason because I think it's just becoming more and more and more important with the way defenses are playing. And I think this list is really cool. It's yards after the catch per reception on throws to the middle of the field. And this could be random.
Baby.
It could be random, but it's basically the best players in the freaking league.
Yeah.
Starting from 10 to 1, it's JSN and then Harold Fannin, Emeka Egbuka, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, J-Mo, Amon-Ra St. Brown. T-Mac is third, behind only Puka and Nico Collins, almost 7 yards after the catch per reception on middle field.
What are his targets totals on those routes compared to the other guys?
Yeah, not very high.
It was just one, but it was good. It was really good.
He has the highest yards per reception on those throws of anybody here on the list. But yeah, he doesn't get very many of them.
But he does project to be like a Nico Collins like player.
Yes.
Yeah.
When I dug into it, I did 25 minutes on him, just an individual video, and he compares 85-90% of Andre Johnson, which is a good, awesome thing. But also, Andre
That's
Johnson.
kind of what I was thinking about when I said 2007. X receiver.
Andre Johnson didn't have his breakout till freaking year 5. It's like kind of the same thing. That's why I ended up being like sort of low on him. Is like, even though Tetairoa McMillan is the man, like we've seen plenty of guys who have been as good or better, where it takes time for them to find an offense that can facilitate it. And Andre Johnson's like target share numbers were even better than McMillan. He's had like 30% of the targets in year 2, which is absurd.
I mean, I'm still there. I have McMillan over Burden, so that's fair.
Yeah.
Really good stuff today.
I'll
Really
stick
good
with
stuff. This episode right here with Theo Grimminger on RotoWire is what got me thinking about Makai Lemon and McMillan and wanting to have this conversation with Pat, because Pat, it's 8 league-winning ADP values, and I don't think 99% of.
Can we scroll off this thumbnail here of my face?
Here we go.
Yeah, let's look at it.
99% of the fantasy nerds doing this analysis are not ever going to come to a conclusion that T-Mac is one of the league winners this year, So I think that's a really good episode to listen to because you get some contrarian takes. Also, a good episode here, of course, is Lord Reeves. I was on the RotoWire podcast as well. Got to shout out our guy, Theo Grimminger. Thank you both for being here so much. I'm glad that we actually did get to the Jordyn Tyson conversation. We didn't have the Carnell Tate one, but if you want to find that, me and Dan Schneier just talked about that in this other 2.5 hour long podcast that we did. So go check that out. Good stuff today, boys. Anything you want to plug before we get out of here? Anybody?
All my stuff's over at Legendary Upside. We just launched we've got some best ball tools over there, including a dynamic rankings tool called the Sidekick. It's very helpful if you're doing best ball volume, but we just launched one that's got, you can upload your own rankings, use ours, use ADP, however you want to sort the players, and just displays your the rankings and kind of a little sidecar. But then it also tags the players with how many teammates you have. It's right at the top here called the kickstand, the one I'm describing now. How many teammates you have? Do you have that team's quarterback? Do you have overlapping buys with that player already? What's your exposure of that on that player so far? So this is included in the base leg up tier, which is just $15 a month. So if you are drafting best ball, we now have a nice kind of starter tool option available for people. And then the base tier also includes all of my rankings and articles over at Legendary Upside, which includes, once the season starts, the walkthrough where I do my team by team breakdown. And then I talk to Rich, who has completed the worksheet, and we compare notes.
Rich Hribar, what can the people expect from you leading up to draft season?
Yeah, I'm still writing for the draft kit from now until kickoff, a different series every week. Last week I did a look at like league-wide trends and then every position. This week I'm doing like my team regression series. Next week I'll be doing like a series just on like red zone regression, like positive, again, because we love touchdowns, that stuff. So definitely check that stuff out if you can have it. And then, looking forward to the season, getting to talk to a guy like Pat. You see, like I love talking to Pat because like he's a guy that looks at like things like, honestly, we're looking at like similar things and like not always like coming to the same conclusions, and then walking through some of those situations of like, oh, I didn't think about it this way, or like didn't factor that in. And that's what kind of makes, I think, people like the show so much.
That's why I like doing this at all, is that you can have those kinds of conversations.
Yeah, so it's fun because we're writing up all these things and looking at the games, and plus also we want it to be like, hey, we know not everyone's reading and anymore, long form especially, so we do want to just have a different avenue to get it to people.
For sure, you've got to. All right, thank you all for being here. Please do subscribe if you have not. Dan Schneier and myself, we just launched this Fantasy Football Today Beyond the Box Score YouTube product this offseason. We've got all sorts of cool stuff up on the channel, so check us out. If this 2.5 hours wasn't enough for you, there's plenty for you to binge. Until then, I'll see you the next episode.